shots. Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus said boosters should be placed on pause so millions of people in developing countries can get their first chance to get a COVID-19 vaccine. But White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki says President Biden disagrees.
We feel that it's a false choice and that we can do both. We've taken action on the global level far more than any country around the world. We also, in this country, have enough supply to ensure that every American has access to a vaccine. We will have enough supply to ensure if the FDA decides that boosters are recommended for a portion of the population, to provide those as well. We believe we can do both, and we don't need to make that choice.
The US does not currently have a plan to authorize boosters, although some public health officials are calling for them. Also in the US today, Dr. Anthony Fauci said he fears the country will be recording up to 200,000 new COVID-19 cases each day by the autumn. Britain has unveiled plans to offer COVID-19 vaccines to all 16 and 17-year-olds ahead of the new school year. Teenagers will not need their parents' permission to get vaccinated. Dr. Jonathan Van Tam is Britain's Deputy Chief Medical Officer.
There is no time to waste in getting on with this. Now we have the JCVI advice on starting that initial first dose in 16 to 17-year-olds, then I want us to proceed as fast as is practically possible. This programme will start in a very short number of weeks.
Belarusian sprinter Kristina Timanovskaya has arrived in Europe after securing police protection at the Tokyo Olympics when Belarusian security agents attempted to force her to fly home. She's been granted a humanitarian visa by the government of Poland. The International Olympic Committee says it's launched an investigation of her treatment at the hands of Belarusian officials. More bodies have washed up on a riverbank in Sudan bordering Ethiopia. Around 40 bodies with gunshot wounds and hands tied behind their backs have now been retrieved from the waters flowing from the Tigray region in northern Ethiopia. FSN's Director of Africa News Coverage is Michael Baleke.
The killings came to public after pictures of bloated bodies circulated on social media. Humanitarian agencies involved in retrieving the corpses claim the victims suffered violent deaths after investigations showed that several bodies were riddled with bullets. The incident follows 8 months of war between Ethiopia's central government and the Tigray People's Liberation Front.
He reported from Kampala. The Ethiopian government claims the pictures showing the mutilated bodies are fake news. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks, looking today at the intersection between the refusal of 90 million Americans to get vaccinated against COVID-19 and international skepticism about the safety of the jabs that America is giving away. The White House yesterday published a catalogue of its largesse so far, showing 65 countries have now received a total of more than 100 million doses of vaccine, a down payment, the White House says, on President Biden's plan to turn America into the world's vaccine arsenal. But at the State Department, spokesman Ned Price found himself pushing back against misinformation rife in some parts of Africa, where it's now common to find people who falsely believe that the donated vaccines are too low quality for the US market itself.
President Biden announced that the United States would be sharing 80 million doses from our own domestic stockpile. To be very clear, these are the same brand names, the same vaccines that go into the arms of, and that have gone into the arms of, the American people. We know they are safe. They are effective.
But the White House knows the fact that 90 million Americans are still refusing to get vaccinated is not only a domestic public health problem, it's a global one as well, because some in other countries may see validation in their decision to spurn the jabs. The main news again, the White House is dismissing a call from the head of the World Health Organization who says there should be a global moratorium on COVID-19 boosters. Britain has unveiled plans to offer COVID-19 vaccines to all 16 and 17-year-olds as the new school year approaches, and 40 more bullet-ridden bodies have washed up on a Sudanese riverbank. Human rights organizations say they came from the strife-torn Ethiopian region of Tigray. And that is the latest feature story news. Simon Marks reporting.
So, Shelby, let's start with you. You say that our bogs and marshes should actually be paved over.
That's right. Absolutely, Brooke. These things are nothing but dead body dumping pits that make life easy for murderers. And it's disgusting to me that sickos like Mr. Popkin actually want to protect these things.
All right, well, Mr. Popkin, how do you respond to this?
Bogs and marshes are important ecosystems that should be protected. I mean, they're already being endangered.
Whoa, excuse me. As long as these human landfills remain open for business, what we're essentially saying to the criminal element is, sure, do whatever you like, and throw the evidence here in this federally protected black hole.
I testified before Senator Chuck Grassley, who wanted to lift federal protection on these lands, and what I told him is exactly what I'm going to tell you now.
And where is Chuck Grassley right now, sir? Could it be that he's sitting at the bottom of a bog somewhere? Why else would you be so hot on these wetlands if you aren't a murderer yourself?
This is the Onion News Network. Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live, 603-283-6160. If you want to join the discussion, that's 603-283-6160. With me tonight, it's
Nikki.
And
Lori.
And I'm Aria, by the way. So the big news today, evidently, the Senate is working on an infrastructure bill, and as you might expect, it's absolutely horrible because it's the government, and that tends to be what they do. But among this, I actually got an email from Kraken today about it, and that's what alerted me to the entire thing. Otherwise, I didn't even know it existed, and I didn't contact Kraken or do anything like that. They just sent me an email, want to be clear on that, saying that the U.S. Senate is beginning its final deliberations on a must-pass bipartisan infrastructure bill. However you feel about the bill, a few senators have included language having nothing to do with infrastructure, and this language could crush the crypto industry. If passed and signed into law, this bill would dramatically expand U.S. government surveillance over the entire crypto ecosystem. Fortunately, Senators Wyden, Toomey, and Lummis have introduced amendments that would fix the language and clarify that the expansion of the definition of a, quote, broker doesn't apply to open source developers or validators like miners or stakers. So evidently, the infrastructure bill wants to redefine a broker as miners and stakers and people who are open source developers. I don't know. I'm not surprised to hear this. I haven't seen the bill, obviously, and from what I hear, it's like 1,000 pages. So even if I had seen it, it wouldn't do me any good.
Right.
But that's pretty much what the government does, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And from what I heard, a lot of the senators reported that, actually the Republican senators said that they felt rushed to pass the bill and that they didn't have enough time to read it and that there wasn't exact clarification on what exactly it entailed. So, whenever that happens, that there's a lot of hidden BS in there.
Yeah,
so, of course, there always is.
Very similar to the American Care Act, if I think about it, where it was pushed forward. No one had time to read it. No one, they didn't.
That was one of the most recent ones.
I don't know.
Kind of in regard to COVID, I think.
No, the Affordable Care Act was during the Obama administration.
Oh, okay.
But it was this great big deal because it was a massive bill. And no one on the Senate read it. They were just told if they wanted to read it, they had to vote on it. And that was the only way they were going to be able to read it. But that's not the only thing buried in this infrastructure bill. Each of you found other stuff that's buried in it. I don't recall exactly what those were now, but what did you find about it? You had an article on it.
Yeah, my article's not loading right now, but Lori said that...
Yeah, there was there's a rider in there so that all new vehicles made in the USA will have breathalyzers in them. And not only just a breathalyzer, not like the ones you blow into now, but it's a sensor that detects alcohol in the air in the car and cameras that are going to be watching you at all times.
So it is not a breathalyzer in the sense that you have to breathe into it in order to crank your car or whatever. It's just continuously is detecting the amount of alcohol in the air.
That's right, yeah.
And if it reaches a certain level of percentage, regardless of what that is, presumably it will turn your car off or not allowed
call
to?
the police or something.
It's not illegal for a passenger to be inebriated in your car, right?
Ooh, that's a really good point.
You can drive drunk people. So I think with a Cinderella license, like if you get a DUI and then the court says, okay, you can drive to work, or you can only drive from 5 a.m. to 5 p.m. or something like that. Some people will have a breathalyzer installed into their car, so they blow in it, and if they pass it, it'll start. So something like that. I mean, obviously, this is just a complete infringement on everybody's rights, but that would make more sense to me if they were going to do something like this rather than testing the air around, because that just, if you spray perfume, there's so many different factors. Yeah, exactly. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
I think infringement on rights is standard at this point, but
Absolutely.
It's not only, doing that. So if we all know that technology is fallible constantly, everything you use, your phone, your computer, everything's constantly messing up. So who's to say that this thing's not going to just lock you out of your car when you have somewhere important to be, or,
Right.
Medical emergency. I mean, it's just, not only an infringement on rights, but it's just outright dangerous. And I'd be very, very concerned if this actually follows through. You said Nissan was doing this?
Nissan is developing it. And so it's also got cameras that are going to be watching you at all times to make sure that you don't look inebriated. So, what if you have
What does
some type of
look
neurological
inebriated
issue?
even mean?
I know.
But you also mentioned that it's going to detect whether or not a child was left in a parked vehicle.
Yeah, they're using some kind of radar system to alert drivers around your car to tell them that there's a child locked in your car.
Well, the radar systems in cars, those have been going on for a while, and they drive me crazy because I use a radar detector, especially here in Keene, where most people drive newer model cars, it's just constantly going off. And I don't want to just disable K-band because that's what Keene PD uses, presumably because most people just turn it off.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I don't like seeing all of these technological implementations going into vehicles because it's a tool that should just do a thing and that's it. It doesn't need all of the bells and whistles. Like yesterday, I bought a water purifier for my faucet, and the very first instruction that it provides is download this app and connect via Bluetooth. Well, hold on. Why,
for what?
Why in the hell would I want my water filter to have Bluetooth capabilities? If I had known that, I would have bought a different model, but it never occurred to me to check, is this a smart water filter?
Everything's smart now.
It's crazy. Yeah, the smart TVs that listen to everything you say, Alexa, and even our phones are constantly listening. But going back to the cars, what really concerns me is the new technology in these cars, because now we have self-driving cars. I just recently saw, and I watch a lot of car videos on YouTube because that's kind of, I'm interested in cars.
Sure.
And I saw one that, and this was Kia, I believe. It was a new model of the Kia Sorento. And Tesla does the same thing where you can be outside of your car, so there's no driver in the car, and you kind of walk the car like a dog with the key fob. So you press a button and it follows you, and you can park it. And just the whole,
wow.
That seems
it was just so strange, and
is that for like people who can't parallel park or something?
I have no clue what the purpose of it is, but they do that also. The car will parallel park for you. I just think there's so much room for malfunction in these things, and some things you just need a real human and a human brain to do.
Right.
Well, I mean, think about how the internet requires you to prove that you're a human and not a robot. It's to recognize crosswalks and stairs and buildings and hills and things like that clearly the AIs driving these cars must not be capable of doing. If they were, then the CAPTCHAs wouldn't be able to, filter out the robots.
Right.
But evidently, robots can't, identify crosswalks or red lights or whatever, because that's how we separate humans from AI on the internet. So yeah, there's a lot of room for error in these, not to mention, once you get to this era of cars having internet capabilities 24/7, we're going to see ransomware hitting vehicles. Someone's just going to be driving down the road and it's just going to play over the radio, hey, in order to protect your safety, we've encrypted your we encrypted your car, and so that you don't accidentally drive into a tree, you need to pay us, half a Bitcoin or whatever.
Yeah.
Just like we see now. And no one is prepared to deal with these things except IT people who keep telling everyone, no, stay as far away from this stuff as you want. But the average person thinks, oh my God, I could turn on my air conditioner from work? I can check my doorbell and see if my Amazon packages are on my doorstep from work.
Yeah, it's just unnecessary.
It's totally unnecessary. But the other thing that's unnecessary is this infrastructure bill in the first place, almost none of which would actually go to infrastructure, even if that's what they actually wrote the bill to do. Most of it's going to end up going to bombs.
Yeah.
Because that's what the American government does.
Of course.
But they're hiding all kinds of nonsense in this, like this part here that Kraken emailed me about that would expand the definition of a broker so that it includes open source developers or validators like miners and stakers. They go on to say, you can help us preserve financial privacy and independence in crypto. Make your voice heard. Call 517-200-9518 and you'll be automatically connected to your senator. I don't know if there's any point. I certainly didn't bother to do it, but maybe you think there's a point in contacting your senators. Or you can contact us and share your opinion. 603-283-6160. There's more coming up. It's Free Talk Live.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at bitcoin.com. That's bitcoin.com.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
Breaking weather news. Belize is sunny and around 82 degrees every day this week.
What's the forecast for your life? If current politics and economic prospects are cramping your freedom, escape to the tropics. ECI Development has affordable second homes for you to own or rent in Belize and other tropical countries. Places with stable governments and growing economies. Secure your freedom now. To find out more, send an email to ftl@ecidevelopment.com.
The LRN.FM social media channels have been revamped. We've eliminated Facebook and focused on other platforms like Twitter and Mastodon, the decentralized alternative to Twitter. On our accounts, you'll find posts from multiple LRN.FM show hosts together in one place. Follow us on Twitter at twitter.lrn.fm, or better yet, move to the decentralized Mastodon social media platform at toot.lrn.fm, toot.lrn.fm. I think you'll like it.
If you're looking for work, the person you are applying to may be even more nervous than you are. And the way things are now, your references have never been more important. Here are 3 tips. First, know that employers are checking. Every hire is under the microscope these days. Second, they won't just be checking references you provide. Figure that all of your ex-employers will get a call and be asked, would you hire him or her again? Third, assume you will be Googled. So before you apply, remove all those party animal photos from your Facebook page. Even if you're not in the job market, effective communication skills have never been more important, with money and attention so scarce now. For more tips for job seekers and getting better results in all your day-to-day communication, hit survivalspeech.com. I'm Holland Cook.
There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com.
There are basically 2 types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer-term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live, 603-283-6160 if you want to join the discussion. That's 603-283-6160. With you tonight, it's Aria,
Nikki,
Lori.
And I want to tell you about Bitcoin.com. It is the place to go to learn about cryptocurrency. Just click Getting Started at the top. There's a couple of short videos for you to watch where you can learn the basics of cryptocurrency, because really, there's no need to continue ignoring this world-changing information. But if you already know about Bitcoin, then check out news.bitcoin.com. It has all of the news headlines that's relevant to you, all on a sleek and easy-to-use website. Bitcoin.com is your source for everything related to cryptocurrency. Let's go to the phones, however. We've got Kirby calling from Indiana. Kirby, good to talk to you again. I haven't talked to you since Forkfest.
Hey, Kirby.
Yeah. Hey, ladies. How you doing?
Doing good. What's on your mind tonight?
Oh, man, New York and the mandatory vaccines. And do they understand that most New Yorkers, how do I say this without saying sounding like I'm calling for violence? Most New Yorkers who are armed, since it's a communist state, are gangbangers. They're not going to stand in line to take a vaccine, and they're not going to let you go door to door. And to that end, there's 340 million people in America, about 400 million legal guns. Most of those are in the hands of people who ain't trying to be forced to take an experimental drug called Master Willie said so.
I agree with you there.
There does seem to be a strong overlap. There does seem to be a strong overlap between people who are pro-Second Amendment and people who are not inclined to take the vaccine.
Yep. And it's not going to end well for, can I say, I think I can say this on the radio, it's not going to play well for Fuhrer de Blasio, because it's not going to be a bunch of people standing in line hollering about Sieg Heil. I had a conversation with a Marion County sheriff today who told me if he was told to go out and confiscate guns, red flag or not, he's turning in his badge because he ain't with that. Because he knows
Good for
if they
him.
do it to my neighborhood, they'll do it to his.
Yep. Well, it's good to have people in police who are actually, willing to not enforce blatantly unconstitutional laws, at least.
Yeah, there's a few decent ones out there. I have actually a part of the encounter that led to that conversation that I'll upload in a couple days here. But it's amazing how soft American people have gotten. I look around the world, the French are protesting. The French. I won't even go no farther than to say the French.
Well, Americans are protesting too, and Americans have been protesting, pretty much since the outset of this.
Yeah, but we do it when we feel like it. Europeans will get out there and go hungry to protest. You know what I'm saying?
I don't know how true that really is. I mean, from what I've seen, there's a few hundred people protesting in Germany and a few hundred people protesting in other parts of the world in crowds that are generally about what we saw at the Michigan State Capitol protest or at the New Hampshire State Capitol protest. We're not seeing like tens of thousands of people pouring out into the streets demanding an end to this. It's a very small minority.
No, we won't see that because most of us are either scared or on the fence, and we got a big thing of Vaseline, so we don't care. We're used to Uncle Sam, and we'll just go, okay, just don't be rough about it. And that's our problem. We've gotten used to being abused.
Yep. Yeah, I don't disagree. Thank you so much for the call tonight, Kirby. I mean, speaking of abuse, we're seeing this continue on, using the Delta strain as an excuse. New York City, as Kirby alluded to, is imposing a citywide vaccination requirement for anyone who wants to go into a restaurant or a bar or an entertainment venue or a theater. if you want to take part in society in New York City, you have to be vaccinated. Yep. And I mean, this isn't a surprise. They telegraphed for a very long time that they were going to be doing this. And when the incentives didn't work, they decided they have to bring out all the masks again and basically turn the vaccinated people against the unvaccinated. And they seem to be doing an excellent job of that.
Oh, yeah.
So you finally got the infrastructure bill pulled up, Nikki. Tell us what the U.S. government is trying to do. And what they say they're trying to do is pass an infrastructure bill, but...
Yeah, alleged infrastructure bill. Let's see how much infrastructure is really in that bill. So the United States Senate will try to complete work this week on a $1 trillion infrastructure investment bill that would bring long-awaited improvements to roads, bridges, mass transit systems, and deliver a rare bipartisan victory to President Joe Biden.
So they want to spend $1 trillion? I mean, that's a number that, is thrown around so often with government that it doesn't even register how big it is any longer. I just hear, oh, what's another $1 trillion? But really, $1 trillion is a lot of money.
It's a lot of money. What is that, 100 billion? Is that how
I think it's a billion.
It's 1,000 billion.
It's 1,000?
1,000 billion. Yeah. So just sit there for like 1 second and think about how many dollars that really, truly is.
It's so many that we weren't sure.
Exactly. That has all been stolen from the American people. So if that doesn't concern you, it should. And another thing I just want to mention, I come from a place that is, the roads are constantly under construction.
It's like that here in New Hampshire as well, and I hate it. There's 2 seasons. There's snow season and there's road repair season.
Yeah, exactly. And that's how it is in most of the Northeast. I'm not sure how it is down south really, but the roads are constantly under construction. And every time they're under construction, at least in Massachusetts, the company that is doing the construction goes at least $1 million over budget.
I'm not surprised. I mean, that's usually how this goes. It's the brother of someone's wife or whatever. Right. And they get the project, and then they just go over budget, and no one cares.
Yeah, and where's that money going, really, you know? So the article continues saying, following long sessions on Saturday and Sunday, Senate negotiators announced that they had finished drafting the 2,702-page bill.
Jesus Christ.
But it's only about infrastructure, guys. Don't worry, there's nothing hidden in that bill. It's just about infrastructure.
There's a lot of commas.
Yeah, a lot of commas.
I feel so bad for the poor intern that had to type up 2,700 something pages.
I wonder if all the pages actually have real content on it, or if it's just
this page left intentionally blank. Lots of those.
I'm sure it's all just loaded with content. I think the FEMA Act was something like 1,700 pages, and sure enough, it was just all text straight through, beyond any human being's ability to understand, because after a few hundred pages, even the best attorney's mind just sort of glazes over with this legal jargon.
I mean, it's purposeful.
Yeah.
It's purposeful so that no one can read it and no one can understand what's in there until it's all done, and then they take months to find out what's in there, and then everyone realizes how bad it really is.
Well, they're not even given time to read it. People, even if they could read 2,000 pages of this nonsense, they aren't even given enough time. It's just like, no, it's fine, just sign it. Let's move along here. We have plenty of things to do.
Nothing to see.
Yep, nothing to see here.
Because it does take a long time to read 2,700 pages.
Yeah.
And they're not being given the time to do it. But of course they're not. And of course the bill isn't about one particular thing. And there's all sort of senators that are sneaking more nonsense into it. What are your thoughts? 603-283-6160. They're calling it an infrastructure bill. Do you want to help the infrastructure? Surely you support this bill.
Carl Watner, longtime proponent of a voluntary society, died last December. You may have seen his articles published on his website, voluntarist.com, in his newsletter, The Voluntarist, the Mises Institute, or elsewhere over the last 40 years. His newest book, I Must Speak Out, Volume 2, The Best of the Voluntarist, is now available via Liberty Under Attack Publications. This 430-page second volume spans the years of 2000 through 2020 and includes articles by Carl Watner, Wagner, Hans Hermann Hoppe, Karl Hess, Benjamin Tucker, George H. Smith, Lysander Spooner, Pete Eyre, Joyce Brand, and many others. I Must Speak Out is for the newly initiated, the veteran voluntarist, or anywhere in between. Buy the book now at libertyunderattack.com/voluntarist. For more great content on building a voluntary society and for Carl's extensive archives, check out voluntarist.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. The British government is removing extra restrictions that it placed on returning travellers from France. The country now becomes just like any other nation on the so-called Amber List. British travellers returning will not be required to quarantine. In other changes, India moves off the red list, and the government is adding Austria, Germany, Slovenia, Slovakia, Latvia, Romania and Norway to its list of approved destinations. Prime Minister Boris Johnson says it's designed to salvage part of the summer holiday season.
People think about them, they save up for them, people yearn to go abroad this year. I totally get that. We've got to balance that against the need to protect our country against the influx of new variants.
The quarantine requirements placed on travellers returning from France had become a political irritant in relations between London and Paris. There was rare agreement on Capitol Hill between Democrats and Republicans today over the threat China poses to the United States.
No other country represents more of a threat to the United States, its economic security, and democratic ideals than China.
That's Senator Mark Warner of Virginia, a Democrat, speaking at a hearing into Beijing's threats to U.S. economic security. Senator Marco Rubio of Florida is a Republican.
China is stealing between $300 and $600 billion a year of American technology and intellectual property.
New York's Governor Andrew Cuomo is under criminal investigation in 4 separate jurisdictions, including Manhattan. He's still refusing to resign, despite the publication of a damning report about his sexual harassment of 11 women and calls by President Biden for him to quit. One woman who claims the governor retaliated against her for coming forward now says she'll launch a lawsuit against him. On the streets of New York on Wednesday, there were signs the governor's popularity is waning.
His ego needs to just go off and say, okay, I need to just humble myself and just resign.
He's inappropriate and he's got some issues he needs to address.
59% of New York voters tell pollsters they now want him to go. The White House is rejecting a call by the World Health Organization for a moratorium on COVID-19 booster vaccinations until more people in the developing world get their first chance to get jabbed. President Biden's press secretary Jen Psaki says the White House disagrees.
We feel that it's a false choice and that we can do both. We've taken action on the global level far more than any country around the world, but we believe we can do both.
The Belarusian sprinter Kristina Timanovskaya is spending her first night in Poland after the government there offered her a humanitarian visa. She flew to Warsaw on Wednesday from Tokyo, just days after Belarusian security agents tried to force her to return to Minsk against her will. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live, 603-283-6160 if you want to join the discussion. That's 603-283-6160. With you tonight is Aria, Nikki, and Lori, and we're talking about the Senate infrastructure bill and the various ridiculous things it has hidden in it that aren't in any way related to actual infrastructure. But of course, that isn't surprising. I don't think we've even gotten into the article yet.
No, not really.
And So let's get into it. What are they hiding in this bill that, they just sort of slipped in and hoped people wouldn't notice?
So, 2,702-page bill. It has been. So this is Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer says it has been decades and decades since Congress passed such a significant standalone investment. So he's trying to make it sound real good.
Well, didn't they just pass a huge? How much were the COVID relief bills?
Trillions, yeah.
That's what I thought.
And it was the same. It was the same exact thing where it was like 2,000 pages long, And senators were saying, listen, we don't have enough time to read these bills. And they were just like, don't care, like, sign it. You only have, I think with the COVID relief bills, they were only given like 30 minutes or something to read it.
And then, of course, it contained things like sending $250,000 to Pakistan for gender studies programs and other nonsense like that.
Yeah, just random stuff.
I think that America collectively has the type of memory is like when you go in the other room to get something and you walk through the door and you forget. That's what happens.
Like my puppy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like if I go away, she like forgets that I was just there 30 seconds ago, right? Yeah. Object permanence.
Yeah.
Americans never learned it.
Yeah, well, it's because they're infantilized.
Yeah, absolutely. And it definitely hasn't been long since we had $1 trillion relief packages.
Nope.
No.
In fact, there's one almost every single year that I can think of.
Wonder why we're in so much debt.
Oh, weird.
Is that what's happening to the currency? Is that why the USD is just on a downward spiral down the drain?
So, in the end, the bipartisan group of senators have produced a bill that will dedicate substantial resources to repair, maintain, and upgrade our nation's physical infrastructure, which we all know is complete BS. The legislation, if enacted, would be the largest U.S. infrastructure investment in decades. Its passage would mark a big win for Biden, blah, 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 blah.
Why would it mark a big win for Biden? Did Biden draft it? Did he introduce it?
I doubt it.
He just happens to be president at the time that it happened.
So this is what I think is happening. Biden is, we can all agree that he's incompetent. He probably
senile.
Has dementia, yes. All the classic signs of dementia, I can confirm that one. So I think
I do love listening to him, though, when he goes on these dementia rants.
It is entertaining, and it's like, this is all, crumbling and burning around us, so I want it to be funny. I felt the same way about Donald Trump. I'm like, if this is going to be a major disaster, I at least want to be able to laugh about it.
Absolutely.
But I think the Democrats and CNN and the leftist media are just really grasping at straws to try to make Biden look like he is some sort of real president, when in all reality, he's just a puppet, and someone's hand is up his butt making him talk, and
it does seem that way. And when their hand stops moving, he starts talking about how Corn Pop was a bad dude.
Yeah,
and kids like stroking
stacking tomato sauce. That was the one I heard today, which was pretty.
I haven't
pretty
heard that
comical. Yeah, I'll have to show you on the break. It's pretty hilarious. But
how do you stack tomato sauce?
I don't know. So the $1.9 trillion economic stimulus and coronavirus aid bill that was enacted earlier this year without Republican support. I wonder why. It would also.
So that bill was almost $2 trillion.
Yeah.
They're printing that money as fast as they can. Get out of USD, people. Get into something like gold or cryptocurrency.
Do yourself a favor and invest in something with real value, because, It would also clear the way for Democrats acting without Republican support to begin work on a budget framework that would sketch out plans for a $3.5 trillion human infrastructure bill.
Human infrastructure?
What is human infrastructure? That bill.
They probably mean like kids in schools and stuff.
That's a weird way to put that, though.
So that, it is. It sounds like plastic surgery to me. It sounds like a breast augmentation or like rhinoplasty or something.
I was thinking like nanobots.
That too. That bill would shovel federal dollars towards fighting climate change, help millions of immigrants gain legal protections, and fund an expansion of healthcare, including for senior citizens in need of assistance at home. The Senate first needs to put the finishing touches on the infrastructure bill, which aims to upgrade the nation's aging roads, bridges, and rail lines, and expand high-speed internet access to rural areas where economies have been hobbled by old technology. Aren't they already doing all of this, though? I mean, I don't really see a giant necessity for this.
I mean, there are places in the U.S. that are still using, like, satellite internet because nothing else is available in those areas.
Yeah, but nobody's, like, using dial-up.
Well, if you can't afford the satellite internet there, I mean, some people probably are still using dial-up.
I didn't even know that existed still.
But they're probably not using, it's not the internet that's holding them back. It's the fact they live in a place that's so backward that they're still using dial-up.
Yeah.
So anyone stuck in that position, they're not going to be helped by having high-speed internet.
Right. I lived in Lawrence, South Carolina for a while, and the grocery store literally had a produce section no bigger than this table. So internet wasn't going to help me get broccoli, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Become not food insecure.
Yeah, like you could buy all the hush puppies you wanted, but
yeah. And that's the thing. They're constantly focusing on the wrong issues.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
So
they're looking at ways that they can give Spectrum, Charter, Consolidated Communication more money. Yeah, and if they give these companies more money to build this infrastructure, then the companies have more customers, and they all make more money. And who gets screwed over? The American taxpayer.
Right.
Or anyone who is dealing in USD.
Yeah.
Because in order to pay for this stuff, they're going to have to inflate the currency, which means they're going to create more USD. And anyone who knows anything knows that this means the USD that already exists is going to become worth less than it is already.
Yeah.
And they just perpetually do this until the USD has fallen to like 3% of its value at the time that it was created, something along those lines.
And we've seen this happen other places. We've seen this happen in Venezuela, where it cost, I don't even know it like a real example, but it was costing like millions of their currency to buy like a loaf of bread, So it's like...
Yeah, we've talked about Venezuela a lot. It's a total mess down there.
So South Africa too. I don't know if you know anything about that, but I raise meat rabbits, and I'm in all these rabbit groups, and somebody just posted there like last week saying they're coming and they're taking our livestock, they're raiding our homes, and like people are,
This is the government or rioters?
They didn't say, like they didn't stay on long enough to
oh my goodness
answer the questions while I was there, but they were saying that like they have to lock up their livestock, they're all starving and they're all fighting in the streets and stealing and like just to get by in South Africa. Like,
doesn't sound pleasant.
No,
it doesn't. So the article continues to say that on Monday, 3 Republican senators criticized the infrastructure bill, saying that they had inadequate time to consider it and taking issue with one of the ways that it would be financed.
Well, it's 2,700 pages. They're going to need a lot of time in order to actually, just read the bill, much
Never
less
mind
process
understand
it. Yes, and understand it and talk about it, why it's a good idea, why it's a bad idea. And they're not going to be given that kind of time because, as they said, President Biden wants a win. And passing this would be a win, even though it has horrific things in it that would expand the definition of, quote, broker to include people who mine and stake cryptocurrency.
Yep.
Now, I don't know anyone out there who is familiar with the concept of staking cryptocurrency, but basically, if you have some of it, every once in a while, you'll end up with more of it. I don't want to go into the mechanisms or how or why this happens, but it helps make the blockchain stronger. It helps make transactions more reliable. But no one is actually doing anything. You're not selling anyone anything. No one is buying anything. You're just staking your coin, and you're getting rewards for doing that. But this new infrastructure bill is going to change that and turn you into a broker, which means you have to get all sorts of licenses just to stake your black coin or your Ethereum. What are your thoughts on this? What do we do when we live in a country where a 2,700-page bill doesn't give senators time to read it? 603-283-6160. It's Free Talk Live.
Free Talk Live.
For me, it's fighting negativity, and the negativity is my thoughts in my head that are negative. And I had to learn to recognize when my thoughts were being negative, because most of my life, most of my thoughts were negative. Mm-hmm. So I had to become aware of when they were happening. And when I become aware of these negative thoughts pervading my thinking, I immediately fight them with positive thoughts. And most of the positive thoughts that I feed myself are positive affirmations about who I am, where I'm going, where I've come from.
Whenever I find myself thinking negatively, I don't consider it fighting the negative thoughts. I just consider it changing my train of thought. I just kind of change tracks to a positive thought and just focus on that.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern, live on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
Hi, I'm Derek J. I don't want a politician to represent me. To me, government is the idea that one group of people can coerce everyone to comply with an edict or face increasing punishments up to and including death. Despite perhaps the most noble of intentions, the best government services are a far cry from what could be provided for by voluntary interactions. Besides, the people who call themselves the government wage wars and put peaceful people in jail for crimes involving no victims. If Starbucks used some of its money to drop bombs, I wouldn't shop there. So why would I support the American empire? The empire does not require my consent.
Derek J's Victimless Crime Spree. Watch it for free and order the Director's Cut DVD at victimlesscrimespree.com. That's victimlesscrimespree.com. Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live, 603-283-6160. If you want to join the discussion, that's 603-283-6160. And after repeatedly just getting censored all over the internet, Free Talk Live finally decided to decentralize. So there is now a social media server, a chat server, and we don't have a video server, but we are over on Odyssey where we can't be censored. Check it out at video.freetalklive.com. It now has more than 1 million channels, and it's backed by a library, which Free Talk Live has been using for years to archive our videos because they can never be deleted or censored. So if you're sick of getting censored on the internet, check out any of these awesome ways, but video.freetalklive is the best place to go to keep your video safe, and that's why we're streaming tonight's show to Odyssey. And again, that's video.freetalklive.com. For those who aren't already aware, it is the Topless Wednesday episode of She Talk Live, and
Woo-hoo!
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, and it's only at video.freetalklive.com, so check it out. Now, Nikki, something appeared at your workplace within the last, I don't know the time.
Yeah, the last week. I think I found it the last time I was there, which was like maybe 3 or 4 days ago. So this appeared, one of my coworkers found this on the table in the break room. It is a printout from Truth for Health Foundation, and the title of this little printout that they placed on the break room table. You said Truth for Health Foundation is a Catholic organization? Yeah, they had something about, when I looked up the website to kind of see their credibility and to see what else they were talking about. Sure. And yeah, they had something else about Catholicism. So not a
there's
lot,
nothing-
but there was a link.
There's nothing
So-
really wrong with that.
Yeah, of course, but it's still something to note. So yeah, I found this on the break room table, which is interesting because it seemed like it was just casually left there so people could just take a look at it and have some food for thought. That is different than what the mainstream media is shoving down our throats and what many hospitals around the country are pressuring a lot of healthcare workers to get this experimental vaccine. And it's not right. So it's important for people to kind of know the other side of the story and to advocate for medical freedom, for us to have complete autonomy over our bodies, and to keep this vaccine mandate away from our hospital because it is so important.
It's insane that we even have to point that out, that a person should have autonomy over their own body.
Yeah.
Right.
And this isn't really something that's new to healthcare because a lot of facilities mandate that you get the flu shot. They mandate that you get like the Hep B vaccine. There's a laundry list of vaccines that you need to get typically to work in healthcare.
So for them, this is just one more vaccine.
Exactly. So that's why I think some people are just kind of not really that worried about it. And if they're more left-leaning or if they're kind of just going along with whatever the media says and whatever they think is correct, they think it's a good thing and they think everybody should be forced to get it. So in this little article that was printed out, it says, be informed. People excluded from the drug company studies for the COVID shots should not receive any type of COVID shot. For these excluded groups, there was no effectiveness or safety data to guide your decision. These groups are childbearing age and pregnant women, children and adolescents under 12 years of age, and nursing home patients.
Now, what they're saying is that the clinical trials done by these drug companies with the vaccines did not include these particular groups.
Nope. So it seems like it was all like healthy, mid-aged people. And it has been a big thing that people
Well, it's probably pretty difficult to find pregnant women who, if you say, hey, let me inject you with this experimental thing, they'll say, okay, sure.
But now I know a lot of pregnant women that got it. Because now
they don't
it's
consider
released.
it experimental.
Yeah, even though it's not approved by the FDA and it was released for emergency use and it's only been out for less than a year. So how do we really know? Some of these women were pregnant for longer than it was tested. So it's crazy to me that people would trust this, but they were.
It's insane to me that people would trust Pfizer and Moderna and Johnson & Johnson.
Yeah,
Big
because
Pharma.
they're making millions of dollars off of this, if not billions. And, there's just huge incentives for them to push this on people. But people are so afraid of COVID, and they're so, that's what people are afraid of. People are afraid of COVID. They're not afraid of the vaccines. And it really should be the opposite, actually, from what we've seen in real life. But this goes on to say that people with past allergic reactions to other vaccines, they were not in the trials. People with allergies to PEG, which is polyethylene glycol.
And I find that interesting because that's one of the two primary ingredients that they put in vape juices. The other one being vegetable glycol, which is basically just vegetable oil. And I have to use high VG juices because I am, in fact, allergic to propylene glycol.
So they're putting this in vaccines also, apparently. You
said propylethylene, right?
Polyethylene glycol.
Okay, that is different.
Oh, okay. So the mRNA vaccines use PEG to stabilize liquid nanoparticles. About 70% of people have antibodies to PEG, which can cause life-threatening reactions, anaphylaxis. So that's when your throat swells up, you can't breathe, and you start to go into a full-body shock.
So more than 70% of people have antibodies that will react badly to PEG?
Yep.
And that's in the vaccines?
Yes.
That doesn't seem like a good idea.
No,
it's a laxative.
It doesn't.
It's a laxative?
Why is there laxative in the vaccines?
Well, they said to stabilize the nanoparticles or whatever.
Yeah, and I'm sure if it's, there's a lot of times where two different things will be, one thing will be used for two completely different causes. So I was actually talking about this with Matt last night, one of our other co-hosts here on Free Talk Live. We were discussing how something, nitro, it's used as like a nasal spray for someone who's having chest pain or angina.
Sure.
And it's also an ingredient in dynamite. So I was like, that's really weird. that something that is extremely explosive and unstable is being used for chest pain. But
well, that would make sense because your chest is just a bunch of combustion and electrical signals. But laxative in my vaccines is kind of weird.
Yeah, I think it's used for the vasodilation, but we digress. So what was the benefit of the COVID shots in the drug company's clinical trial? No evidence of reduced spread to others, as we've seen that, because everybody who got the COVID shot is still spreading it and still getting it.
And the government is admitting this while at the same time saying that the vaccines work wonderfully. It's amazing that no one is going, okay, but then why are the vaccinated people still spreading it at the same rate as the unvaccinated people? It doesn't seem to work at all.
Yeah.
Much less wonderfully.
People just pick and choose what they want to believe. So,
it's horrible that we allow the government to say two completely contradictory things, and they don't get called on it. I mean, the media,
people just let it slide.
It has to be the media because they're the ones with the microphones there in front of the politicians who call them on it. But the media's like, "Yay, yay, good speech, good speech." When the NIH director last night, we covered part of his speech or part of his interview on, I think, Fox News, where he said, the vaccines work great. But whether you're vaccinated or unvaccinated, the best way to prevent the spread of COVID-19 is with masks. So he basically admitted that masks work better than the vaccine.
It's crazy. And like I've heard, I forget who it was, but some famous person was like, yeah, I got COVID and I'm vaccinated, but I bet I would have died if I didn't get the vaccine. So thank God I got the vaccine. I'm like, how are you getting this from just what people believe is...
That's what they're fed.
Yeah.
That's what they're fed, that if you get the vaccine, then you'll only get it kind of bad.
But most people don't get it that badly in the first place. I mean, the asymptomatic carriers, that was most people who were otherwise just completely healthy.
Right, or had like a little cold.
Yeah. I lost my sense of smell and taste for like 7 weeks, much longer than the average person. And I was sore and tired for like a day. And that was it. But yet, all of the coworkers that I worked with, when they got the vaccine, they were sick for days.
Yeah. The side effects from the vaccine are worse than the side effects from COVID.
That was my experience, for sure.
Yeah. How many people have gotten the vaccine, as opposed to how many people have gotten COVID?
So
we don't even know.
65% of people have gotten the COVID-19 vaccine in New Hampshire. I think the national average is right around 50%.
That's way more than I thought it was going to be. That's a lot of people.
Yeah, it's people who watch television and who have been sitting in front of it for the last year and a half just being fed fear and not being able to escape out of that fear bubble to go, it's actually not that bad when I look outside.
Yeah.
Because if you believe the news, they don't say it, but you would probably operate under the delusion that bodies are just piling up in the streets, the hospitals are just overwhelmed, people are dying left and right, and the only way out of this is the vaccine. So... living in that fear bubble, I don't know what else they can do, and now they just love it. They want to be afraid now.
That's insane.
It is. What do you think? 603-283-6160. There's more coming up. It's Free Talk Live.
When Monster Hunter International discovers one of Isaac Newton's wardstones being auctioned off, they decide to steal it and use it to destroy the Chaos God once and for all. But a mysterious thief upends their plan, and it soon becomes a race against time as something much older and infinitely more evil awakens in the jungles of South America. Monster Hunter Bloodlines by New York Times bestselling author Larry Correia and Baen Books. Visit monsterhunternation.com for more.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it.
Get started with Bitcoin at bitcoin.com. That's bitcoin.com.
The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount. Some of you asked, and now we've delivered. LRN.FM's live Keene, New Hampshire studio shows are now streamed in HD on Twitch. Visit our channel at twitch.lrn.fm and give it a follow. If you have Amazon Prime, you get 1 free subscription on Twitch. If you use it on our channel, Twitch will give LRN.FM a monthly piece of your Prime subscription cost. So please watch, follow, share, and subscribe to twitch.lrn.fm. That's twitch.lrn.fm.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. The British government is removing extra restrictions that it placed on returning travellers from France. The country now becomes just like any other nation on the so-called Amber List. British travellers returning will not be required to quarantine. In other changes, India moves off the red list, and the government is adding Austria, Germany, Slovenia, Slovakia, Latvia, Romania and Norway to its list of approved destinations. Prime Minister Boris Johnson says it's designed to salvage part of the summer holiday season.
People think about them, they save up for them, people yearn to go abroad this year. I totally get that. We've got to balance that against the need to protect our country against the influx of new variants.
The quarantine requirements placed on travellers returning from France had become a political irritant in relations between London and Paris. There was rare agreement on Capitol Hill between Democrats and Republicans today over the threat China poses to the United States.
No other country represents more of a threat to the United States, its economic security, and democratic ideals than China.
That's Senator Mark Warner of Virginia, a Democrat, speaking at a hearing into Beijing's threats to U.S. economic security. Senator Marco Rubio of Florida is a Republican.
China is stealing between $300 and $600 billion a year of American technology and intellectual property.
New York's Governor Andrew Cuomo is under criminal investigation in 4 separate jurisdictions, including Manhattan. He's still refusing to resign, despite the publication of a damning report about his sexual harassment of 11 women and calls by President Biden for him to quit. One woman who claims the governor retaliated against her for coming forward now says she'll launch a lawsuit against him. On the streets of New York on Wednesday, there were signs the governor's popularity is waning.
His ego needs to just go off and say, okay, I need to just humble myself and just resign.
He's inappropriate and he's got some issues he needs to address.
59% of New York voters tell pollsters they now want him to go. The White House is rejecting a call by the World Health Organization for a moratorium on COVID-19 booster vaccinations until more people in the developing world get their first chance to get jabbed. President Biden's press secretary Jen Psaki says the White House disagrees.
We feel that it's a false choice and that we can do both. We've taken action on the global level far more than any country around the world, but we believe we can do both.
The Belarusian sprinter Kristina Timonovskaya is spending her first night in Poland after the government there offered her a humanitarian visa. She flew to Warsaw on Wednesday from Tokyo, just days after Belarusian security agents tried to force her to return to Minsk against her will. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. As the Taliban continues to try and seize control of several provincial capitals in Afghanistan, it is increasingly clear that the country faces a violent and turbulent future once US forces complete their withdrawal by the end of this month. President Ashraf Ghani this week accused the US of what he called an abrupt decision to pull out, and he said he had warned President Biden of the consequences of withdrawal. But the US remains determined to end its 20-year presence in the country, and this week Biden administration officials would not say whether they are committed to defeating the Taliban in order to defend the Afghan government. Oz Kateri is a freelance journalist with extensive experience in conflict zones.
The geopolitical situation is a lot more complicated. We can't point to one malicious actor and say, well, hey, if we got rid of that actor, then things would stabilize. By and large, the President Ashraf Ghani saying US withdrawal has led to a lot of this. Yes, I mean, given that it was a largely advisory role rather than a ongoing military occupation, I think it's fair to say that the Taliban wanted this opportunity, were pressuring the US to leave, and now that the US has left, they're using this opportunity to take control of as much of the country as they feasibly can.
The US says it's still committed to negotiations with the Taliban in Doha, although those talks have been underway for 3 years and so far have proved fruitless. The main news again, the British government is removing extra restrictions it placed on returning travellers from France. They'll now be able to avoid quarantine. Belarusian sprinter Kristina Timanovskaya is spending her first night in Poland after the government there offered her a humanitarian visa. And New York's Governor Andrew Cuomo is under criminal investigation in 4 separate jurisdictions after a report accused him of sexually harassing 11 women. And that is the latest feature story news. Simon Marks reporting.
The manatee is a solitary creature, drifting along in the warm, peaceful shallows. They are not usually held in a small glass enclosure with 3 other male manatees hell-bent on the violent forced sex that I, for real, saw with my own eyes while alone one night at SeaWorld, San Diego. A distant relative of the elephant, the manatee has a prehensile upper lip which it uses to gather food. It also has a large penis. Classified as endangered, human boaters often cause serious wounds to manatees' flippers, rendering it difficult for this one poor little rescue manatee to escape a large male manatee intent on unwanted anal intercourse. One needed not to look in that little manatee victim's cold, soul-sapped eyes to know this was not the first time this had happened, nor would it be the last.
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live, 603-283-6160. That's the call line if you want to join the conversation. That's 603-283-6160. With you tonight, it's Aria, Nikki, and Lori, and we're talking about vaccine side effects, specifically COVID-19 vaccine side effects. I've got a story here about the Pfizer vaccine being linked to rare cases of eye inflammation. 21 people developed anterior uveitis, and 2 developed multiple evanescent white dot syndrome. The Pfizer coronavirus vaccine may be linked to a form of eye inflammation called uveitis, according to a multi-center Israeli study led by Professor Zohar Habat-Runer from Tel Aviv's Soraski Medical Center. The research was conducted at a lot of names that really aren't important to the topic at hand. It was accepted for publication by the peer-reviewed ophthalmology journal Retina. Habat-Wilner, head of the uveitis, they're going to keep making me say that word, and I know that's not how it's pronounced, found that 21 people, in total 23 eyes, apparently they felt that important to clarify. Now I'm really confused. 21 people, but 23 eyes were infected, who had received 2 shots of the Pfizer vaccine, developed uveitis within 1 to 14 days after receiving their first shot, or within 1 day to 1 month after the second. 21 people developed anterior uveitis, and 2 developed, they already repeated that. All the patients in the study met the World Health Organization and Naranjo criteria. Do you know what that is?
No.
I don't either. Linking the onset of uveitis to the vaccination. This time frame is consistent with other reports of uveitis following various vaccines. She said that any patients that had other systemic diseases that could have been related were under control before vaccination. In addition, none of the patients had any changes in their systemic treatments for at least 6 months before getting the shots. 8 of the patients had a prior history of uveitis, but no less than 1 to 15 years later. Specifically, most cases were mild, only 3 were severe. It would be really helpful if they told us what the hell uveitis is.
So it's an inflammation of the middle layer of the eye, but it's pretty rare. Like, you don't see it that often. But
Is it a major thing?
I don't think so. It can be treated with medications, but I don't think it like makes you go blind or anything.
Okay, well that's good at least. There's not much more to it than that. I expected there would be, but that was pretty much the extent of it.
So we're gonna see a lot of like random stuff like that, like the uveitis, or
You mentioned a lot of blood clots.
Guillain-Barré syndrome too.
I've never heard of that. What is that?
So it's a nerve. It's like a degenerative nerve condition. So it's really, really awful. By the way, it starts kind of
every degenerative disease I've heard about was pretty awful.
Yeah. So it kind of starts from like the feet and work their way up. So people have a hard time like walking, and it just keeps getting progressively worse and worse. But stuff like that is anything to do with like the immune system. I think basically it's a neurological condition that the body's immune system is attacking itself. So it's like also an autoimmune disease. So pretty much any like inflammatory disease or autoimmune disease, whenever you give any sort of like vaccination or anything that kind of triggers the immune system artificially, that you kind of put yourself at risk for like random things like this. So autoimmune diseases are big, or so it's not really a surprise to me that people are seeing this weird rare eye inflammation disease after the COVID shot. We're going to see a lot of random stuff like that. But what I'm more concerned about is like 21-year-olds getting blood clots in their arms and having to get it amputated.
That is alarming.
I'm pretty concerned what's going to happen 10 years from now to all the people who got vaccinated.
I've heard some theories that some people think that in 2 years, everybody that got the vaccine is just going to drop dead within the next 2 years.
I mean, it's not unlikely.
I guess we'll see.
We have no idea what sort of long-term effects this is going to have. Like, even if it went through full FDA testing, that doesn't mean it doesn't have long-term consequences, long-term impacts.
Right, look at Gardasil.
Yeah.
And that's still being pushed.
Yeah, they still use Gardasil, and it's been proven to give you cervical cancer.
Right. And they're just like, that's fine, just take it.
Well, there was a...
You don't want to get cervical cancer, you better get cervical cancer instead.
Yeah, and that's the most ironic part. It was to prevent you from getting cervical cancer, but it was giving people cervical cancer.
Right.
And they're still prescribing that?
Yeah, they're still giving it
They give it to
people.
like preteens.
Yeah, I got it, so I guess we'll see.
Yeah.
So the World Health Organization is calling for a halt to COVID-19 booster shots, at least. But it's not because they're concerned about the possible side effects of this or anything like that, but it's amazing to me that we're already at a point where people are needing booster shots and people are clamoring to get them. People are lining up. They're eager to get them. There's a hospital in San Francisco that will give you whichever one of the shots that you want, basically, as a booster shot. They're like, oh, you got the Johnson & Johnson? That's fine. We'll give you Pfizer as a booster shot.
It's a really big no-no, too. You are not supposed to do that.
Well, they don't seem to care. I mean, the science on this has been completely thrown out. Our co-host Mark wanted to go on a cruise, so he got the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, but he did it after he got the Moderna shot. Yeah, so
I'm alarmed.
It was because he was told that the Moderna shot would clear up the brain fog that he had from having contracted COVID-19.
Okay.
So that was why he got that, and then a few weeks later he got the Johnson & Johnson, and was awesome. Double doses of an experimental medication.
Yeah, well,
Way to go,
they're
Mark.
two completely different. Like, one's an mRNA, and then the Johnson & Johnson, as far as I know, is more like standard typical vaccine where so the Pfizer and the Moderna are like just straight up gene therapy, and the Johnson & Johnson is an actual vaccine where it has like an attenuated, like small, weakened part of the COVID virus in it. So
like a flu shot.
It's a shame that you can't just be like, well, I've had COVID-19 already, so let me on this cruise.
Yeah.
Because all the evidence that I've seen suggests that natural immunity lasts longer and is superior to the vaccines. Which isn't surprising. I mean, the human body has had hundreds of thousands of years to evolve and to make itself really good at fighting off viruses. The vaccines, not so much. But so the vaccines need booster shots, evidently, and the World Health Organization said Wednesday for there to be a moratorium on COVID-19 booster shots until at least the end of September to address a shortfall in vaccine supplies to poor countries. Now, one of the things I heard during one of the news rotators that we use is that the Biden White House is like, no, I think that's silly. We're not going to stop the booster shots, because they're essentially saying it's not a zero-sum game. us using our booster shots isn't going to lower the amount of shots that we're giving to other countries. But it's just fascinating to me that the World Health Organization, the embodiment of what we were supposed to do during the COVID-19 lockdown, according to the left, the Biden administration is not like, yeah, you shut up, we're not going to listen to you. And no one takes issue with it. The call came as some rich country government said they would start administering booster shots to increase protection for those most at risk from COVID-19, while others, such as the US and UK, have said they are studying the matter. The World Health Organization's appeal highlights the tension between national governments' desire to protect their own populations and what global public health experts say is the longer-term risk that if the virus is allowed to circulate freely in poorer countries, it will have multiple opportunities to mutate into variants that are more successful at defeating vaccines. And I am just thrilled to death that the Wall Street Journal, which I found on Drudge Report, happened to say exactly what I said caused the rise of the Delta strain. Oh, look, we have this strain of the virus that was evolved basically to go around the vaccine. The only way this vaccination nonsense could have worked is if every single person got the vaccine at the same time. And there was no room for it to evolve into something that could go around the vaccine. But here, the World Health Organization is rightly pointing out that if we allow the virus to circulate, that just gives it more opportunities to mutate into variants that can defeat vaccines. As the highly infectious Delta variant of the coronavirus is becoming dominant in country after country, in spite of the vaccines, or in fact because of the vaccines, Israel has started giving a third shot to its most vulnerable people, while the German and French governments have said they intend to soon. Have you been vaccinated? If so, do you intend to get a booster shot, or are you fed up with this nonsense? Should it have worked the first time, or even the second time? Now you need a third shot. What about your fourth shot, your fifth shot? How many shots do you have to get before you say it's enough? 603-283-6160. There's more coming up. It's Free Talk Live.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
Breaking weather news. Belize is sunny and around 82 degrees every day this week.
What's the forecast for your life? If current politics and economic prospects are cramping your freedom, escape to the tropics. ECI Development has affordable second homes for you to own or rent in Belize and other tropical countries. Places with stable governments and growing economies. Secure your freedom now. To find out more, send an email to ftl@ecidevelopment.com.
If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
After a devastating war, the alien visitors were driven back, and their willing human collaborators were left behind to face the music. When Emma Jean Anderson's ex-lover brings her from prison, Nathan Foster and his 14-year-old nephew Ben are tasked with bringing the pair to justice. An easy enough job until they discover something is inside Emma Jean, and the fate of the planet hangs in the balance. The Family Business by Mike Coopery from BaneBooks.com.
On Free Talk Live, we're bringing people to the ideas of liberty every day. From wrestling superstars like Glenn Jacobs.
You guys really are having an impact, I believe. Like I said, a lot of where I am now is due to listening to Free Talk Live. You changed my mind on some very important issues years ago.
To random people tuning in on the radio.
I was kind of stuck in the left-right paradigm. I heard your show by chance on a Saturday night. From there, I went on, joined the Free State Project, and become an amplifier. So, I mean, that's really the reason why I amp is because I know that if it wasn't for you guys being on as many stations as you are, I never would have found the ideas of liberty.
Your AMP will directly change more lives by getting Free Talk Live in front of people looking for talk radio online and on the air. When you AMP Free Talk Live, you get perks like access to the AMP-only Facebook group and AMP podcast. Visit amp.freetalklive.com. The LRN.FM's social media channels have been revamped. We've eliminated Facebook and focused on other platforms like Twitter and Mastodon, the decentralized alternative to Twitter. On our accounts, you'll find posts from multiple LRN.FM show hosts together in one place. Follow us on Twitter at twitter.lrn.fm, or better yet, move to the decentralized Mastodon social media platform at toot.lrn.fm, toot.lrn.fm. I think you'll like it. Are you a cryptocurrency advocate? The Crypto Tip is the ideal outreach tool to help new people discover cryptocurrency. It's a printable business card-sized tip that you can give to service providers, preferably in addition to a good cash tip. When the server scans the QR code, it'll bring up an explanation of cryptocurrency, how to install a wallet, and allow them to claim the tip. If they don't claim the crypto, you get your tip refunded to you after a time period you specify. Plus, if they do claim the tip, you get an email alert. Create as many tips as you want at cryptotip.org. That's cryptotip.org.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live, 603-283-6160. That's the number if you want to join the conversation. That's 603-283-6160. With you tonight, it's Aria,
Nikki, and Lori.
And authorities are also concerned that the protection given by vaccines and previous infections could wane over time in a way that could put people at risk again as winter approaches in the Northern Hemisphere. Now, that's not surprising. I mean, most vaccines wear off, Nikki? I'm not an expert on this subject.
No, generally, well, it depends what type of vaccine. Like, I know, like, the tetanus shot, you have to get, like, every 10 years or something. And then, most of the shots that we give infants, they'll have to get, like, the Hep B, and then there's a few other ones that they have to get at least, like, 3 or 4 times.
Okay.
So
it's
generally,
not
you'll have to get boosters, but...
World Health Organization officials point out that there isn't firm evidence about the longer-term effectiveness of COVID-19 vaccines, or indeed their long-term side effects, given that they have only been out for 4 months. Preliminary studies suggesting that antibodies against the disease fade over time ignore other responses that the immune system brings to bear against the disease, specialists say. The WHO said the world is falling short of the organization's target of giving 10% of the population of every country a vaccine shot by the end of September. While richer countries have administered almost 100 doses for every 100 people, low-income countries have administered just 1.5 doses per 100 people. Most of the vaccines currently require 2 doses. I understand the concern of all governments to protect their people from the Delta variant, which, from what I can tell, the COVID-19 vaccines don't do. But we cannot and should not accept countries that have already used most of the global supply of vaccines, using even more of it, while the world's most vulnerable people remain unprotected. Accordingly, the World Health Organization is calling for a moratorium on boosters until at least the end of September, to enable at least 10% of the population of every country to be vaccinated. Now, let's remember what they just said about how if the virus is allowed to circulate, it will have multiple opportunities to mutate into variants that are more successful at defeating vaccines. 10% of the community being vaccinated is going to allow exactly that to happen, which is just going to put more money into the hands of Big Pharma as they come out with a new vaccine against the new strains, the new variants. He said that more than 80% of global vaccine supplies had gone to richer countries. Well, they were produced in richer countries, I think. It's not that Pfizer and Moderna sent their vaccines to the United States. They created them here, and the U.S. government paid for them, right?
Right. Yeah.
He said many people in poor countries can't afford to eat if they fall ill and can't work. Well, that's fine because COVID-19 isn't likely to put them out of work. The World Health Organization argues that 10% population coverage is needed to protect health workers and the oldest people most at risk of dying from COVID-19. But 40% coverage, which the agency targets for the end of the year, would be needed to capture everyone over 50. Dr. Tedros said that cooperation was needed particularly among the small number of countries and companies that control global vaccine supplies. He said the group of 20 large economies had a vital leadership role to play as countries that are the biggest producers, consumers, and donors of COVID-19 vaccines. I don't know what the hell more does he want from them? If they're the largest producers and the largest consumers and the largest donors of the vaccines, what the hell else can they do? Now, I'm no fan of the United States government or any of these other governments, but it sounds like, they're, at least in regard to distributing the vaccines, whether they work or not, they're kind of doing the best they can.
I don't even understand what 10% of the population has to do with protecting our most vulnerable. If every one of 10 people that you meet is vaccinated, those other 9 people are still unvaccinated, so you're still at risk.
Presumably what they want to do is vaccinate all of the people who are over 75 years old or whatever, the most vulnerable people, and that represents about 10% of the population. That's my guess, based on what they said. It's quite conspicuous that the countries that did receive these vaccines are those countries that host the developers of the vaccines, whether it's in the US or Europe, he said.
Wouldn't that make sense, though?
Yeah. That's exactly what I would expect. That's not conspicuous. That's pointing out that the developers of the vaccines are in the US and Europe. He said the pandemic emerged during a period of international trade and other tensions which hampered vaccine cooperation, and that G20 countries failed to provide the leadership that would have allowed poorer countries to develop vaccine production capabilities. I don't want to imagine Venezuela trying to develop their own vaccine with everything. No, that's insane. Western governments are beginning to ramp up supplies of vaccines to poorer countries, many through the WHO-backed COVAX facility that got off to a stuttering start. Biden said Tuesday that his administration has shipped more than 110 million COVID-19 vaccines to 65 countries as it works to share supply with the rest of the world following regulatory and logistical setbacks. I don't care if they ship out 100% of the COVID-19 vaccines to other countries. Well, I kind of do, actually, now that I think about it, because I don't want the U.S. government poisoning other countries, but...
You know what else I have an issue with? The fact that people always make it seem like the US and European countries have this obligation to rescue the rest of the world. Like, we have to do all this stuff in foreign aid, and it usually just turns out into us deploying our military there and them doing, like, horrific crimes and, like, violent acts against innocent people, but it just seems like...
Yeah, why is this the U.S. government? Why is it the U.S. government's responsibility to vaccinate the elderly in Venezuela?
Yeah, like, why is it really their problem? Like, that sounds like it should be Venezuela's problem, and I know that kind of sounds, like, cruel, but it's like, how much more money do we have to, like, funnel into other places?
I think it's because patriotism centers around a weird hero complex.
Yeah.
Like,
certainly.
We gotta rush in all the time, save the day, even if they don't want us to, even if it's gonna kill them all.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to be cold-hearted. I don't think the American government should be doing this, but if some church or some charity organization wants to raise some money and buy some COVID-19 vaccines and get them shipped to Venezuela, I have no issue with that.
And you know what? We have a lot of extra vaccines, actually. So I think
because a lot of people don't want them.
Yeah, so I think we should be able to, like, ship them over there if we have excess, but I don't think it should, like, necessarily be the U.S.'s responsibility. And also, I think the U.S. does plenty in foreign aid. So for this article to kind of, like, spin it around saying they're not doing enough, I mean, if anything, we're doing way too much.
A spokesman for the German healthcare ministry said that the government would donate bilaterally or via international schemes around 30 million doses to nations that have poor access to vaccines, but that it would also continue with this program of administering a third dose to its vulnerable population. In the U.S., Pfizer and its partner BioNTech said last month that they would seek clearance from U.S. regulators to distribute a booster shot of its COVID-19 vaccine based on encouraging initial study data. Federal health agencies responded with a statement saying that fully vaccinated Americans currently don't need a booster shot, but that's not going to stop people from getting them. So regardless of what the priests are saying today, the believers want to believe and they want their booster shot. More coming up. It's Free Talk Live.
Free Talk Live's video archives have been on Library for years. Library is an uncensorable, decentralized, blockchain-based media sharing protocol, and we're big fans of it here on Free Talk Live. In 2020, Library launched Odyssey, a video sharing website to compete with YouTube, and it's really taking off, now with over 1 million channels, many of whom are disaffected YouTube creators. During YouTube's crackdown for not towing the government line on COVID, the Free Talk Live YouTube channel started receiving strikes and could be completely taken down at any moment. Thankfully, Odyssey started offering live streaming, so we're now streaming live every night and posting our video archives permanently to Odyssey. You can watch live or anytime on our Odyssey channel by visiting video.freetalklive.com. If you want to go all in, download the desktop app at lbry.com, and then every video archive you watch, you'll help seed and keep it online forever. At minimum, we ask you visit video.freetalklive.com and follow us on Odyssey today. video.freetalklive.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. The British government is removing extra restrictions that it placed on returning travellers from France. The country now becomes just like any other nation on the so-called Amber List. British travellers returning will not be required to quarantine. In other changes, India moves off the red list, and the government is adding Austria, Germany, Slovenia, Slovakia, Latvia, Romania and Norway to its list of approved destinations. Prime Minister Boris Johnson says it's designed to salvage part of the summer holiday season.
People think about them, they save up for them, people yearn to go abroad this year. I totally get that. We've got to balance that against the need to protect our country against the influx of new variants.
The quarantine requirements placed on travellers returning from France had become a political irritant in relations between London and Paris. There was rare agreement on Capitol Hill between Democrats and Republicans today over the threat China poses to the United States.
No other country represents more of a threat to the United States, its economic security, and democratic ideals than China.
That's Senator Mark Warner of Virginia, a Democrat, speaking at a hearing into Beijing's threats to U.S. economic security. Senator Marco Rubio of Florida is a Republican.
China is stealing between $300 and $600 billion a year of American technology and intellectual property.
New York's Governor Andrew Cuomo is under criminal investigation in 4 separate jurisdictions, including Manhattan. He's still refusing to resign, despite the publication of a damning report about his sexual harassment of 11 women and calls by President Biden for him to quit. One woman who claims the governor retaliated against her for coming forward now says she'll launch a lawsuit against him. On the streets of New York on Wednesday, there were signs the governor's popularity is waning.
His ego needs to just go off and say, okay, I need to just humble myself and just resign.
He's inappropriate and he's got some issues he needs to address.
59% of New York voters tell pollsters they now want him to go. The White House is rejecting a call by the World Health Organization for a moratorium on COVID-19 booster vaccinations until more people in the developing world get their first chance to get jabbed. President Biden's press secretary Jen Psaki says the White House disagrees.
We feel that it's a false choice and that we can do both. We've taken action on the global level far more than any country around the world, but we believe we can do both.
The Belarusian sprinter Kristina Timonovskaya is spending her first night in Poland after the government there offered her a humanitarian visa. She flew to Warsaw on Wednesday from Tokyo, just days after Belarusian security agents tried to force her to return to Minsk against her will. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live. 603-283-6160 if you want to join the conversation. That's 603-283-6160. And I don't know about you, but I'm sick of talking about COVID-19. Nikki, you talked about during the break that you were sick of COVID-19. Lori, I'm sure you're sick of it as well.
Since last March.
Yeah,
Right, yeah.
I remember saying sometime around last March or last April that I was sick of talking about this, and here I am a year and a half later, still just regularly talking about this cold.
This 2 weeks. We just got to do it for 2 weeks.
Yep.
For 2 weeks.
2 weeks,
we
2
gotta-
years.
And then 2 more weeks, and then 2 more weeks.
I mean, that's my big issue with all of this, right? It was, we just need 2 weeks to flatten the curve, and then that turned into 6 months, and that turned into more than a year or whatever. Fine. Did you prepare? Did you expand the ICUs? Did you buy the ventilators? Did you get the hospital staff to handle it when we lifted all these restrictions? And the answer to all of those questions is no. They didn't add any new ICU beds.
I think they gave everyone $600. That wasn't good enough.
Well, they gave everyone $1,200, I think, and
Twice, right? It was like 600, 1,200.
I think it was 600.
Well, now we're all cured.
Wait, are we talking about the stimulus?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was 1,200, and then 600, and then 1,400, if I recall correctly. Someone stole my $600 one, I think.
Really?
It never arrived. I mean, it's not like I was intently looking out for it or anything like that, but the $1,400 one came, and the $600 one that was supposed to come before that never did. The $1,200 one did, though, and at the time, I was still able to use cryptocurrency, so I used it to buy Bitcoin, and that proved to have been a good decision.
Yeah.
Yep, I did too. And that's why I was kind of glad, because I'm like, at first I was like, this is just going to, increase inflation. I was really, really concerned about the COVID relief bill. And I was like, you know what? If the government wants to give me money to buy more crypto with, then that's totally fine.
That was exactly what I said, yeah. But we're going to change the subject here because I've got an interesting article here. It starts with this. I didn't want to deny my husband his marital rights. For many evangelical women, sex comes with pain and anxiety.
Cringe.
Yeah. So Christy was raised
I liked that little graphic there. It's like her vagina with like an upside down cross there.
It is an upside down cross, isn't it? Yeah. Christy was raised like a lot of conservative Christian and evangelical girls in the 90s. She was in high school when author and former pastor Joshua Harris published I Kissed Dating Goodbye, the now disavowed Christian bestseller that advised against couples even kissing before marriage. She read Elizabeth Elliot's chaste love story, Passion and Purity, a popular evangelical book about waiting for God's timing for romance. Christy followed the rules at camp and stuck to a one-piece swimsuit, sometimes with a t-shirt cover-up to protect the boys from temptation. Her North American Baptist Church wasn't extreme. Remember all of that crap they just said, okay? And remember, I'm from the extreme part of the Baptist in the South. Girls wore pants, for example, but modesty was central and the message was clear. Boys were always thinking about sex, and so you need to take care of yourself, need to cover yourself up, she recalls. But for Christy, who asked not to share her last name, the mandates didn't end once she was safely ensconced in marriage. When she wed at 26, she was a virgin. She believed, quote, sex was only for marriage and then God would bless it. Taught never to refuse sex with her husband unless it was an absolute necessity, and paired with her then husband's demands, Christy was left submitting to what felt like obligatory sex and guilt over how miserable she felt. In recent years, persistent critique from a generation raised in the 90s and 2000s purity movement has led to a broad interrogation of its teachings, particularly those directing adolescent girls to guard against young men's sinful appetites. Harris rejected his book's central premises in a multi-year walkback. As part of the reversal, he also stated that there is no one right way to date. He deconstructed his own faith, he announced a divorce from his wife, and he repented for his views on women. Interesting that they use the word repented for this. He repented on his views on women and the LGBTQ community and says he no longer considers himself a Christian. While Harris tried to detangle himself from the movement for which he'd long been poster child, the hashtag Church2 movement, this is the first time I've ever heard about
I haven't heard of that either.
A Christian offshoot of hashtag MeToo was already doing the work of making clear how purity culture worked to normalize abuse. But a similar probe of evangelical sexual teachings within marriage is long overdue. Faithful girls grew up into women who believed marriage mandated perpetual sexual availability, that their sexual performance would protect their husbands from straying and from sinning. A study of thousands of Christian women published in the book The Great Sex Rescue suggests the consequences of some influential evangelical marital sexual teachings are just as scarring, long-lasting, and in some ways more problematic. The damaging shadow of teen purity lessons still lingers, and expectations around sex in marriage last a long time, impacting Christian women's everyday interactions with their husbands. Now, they go on to say, among the popular books I was skipping over a lot when they said that. Among the popular books that shaped this mindset is Every Man's Battle. Every Man's Battle promised a practical, detailed plan for men who desire sexual purity and argued, quote, the prevalence of sexual sin among men was derived naturally simply by being male. The authors assert that due to sperm production, men naturally desire sexual release about every 48 to 72 hours, leaving them highly susceptible to temptation within 3 days of their last. And temptation lurks everywhere, from lingerie ads to female joggers.
They're blaming rapists on sperm production?
And women.
That's what
and women. Don't forget that part.
And joggers and beer commercials and even receptionists.
I can't even go on a run without...
No. You're a sinner.
The flip side of evangelical purity culture stressed that through marriage, women can help their husbands keep from losing in their war against temptation, or so the theory goes. Immediately upon the wedding night, women are expected to transform from a chaste protector of purity into an eager sexual partner geared to prevent her husband's sinful eyes from straying. As Every Man's Battle put it, your wife can be a methadone-like fix when your temperature is rising.
What?
I kind of want to read this book now just to see how messed up it really is. Jumping there, after a purity upbringing, from diligently pure to temptress in the marital bedroom, can be a difficult physical, psychological, and spiritual leap, and probably impossible for a lot of them. For many Christian women, this transition has lasting impacts on their relationship with sex and their own bodies, erasing the concept of consent to align with certain interpretations of Scripture. Years into untangling the lasting impact of girlhood purity culture, after #Church2 outed a raft of abusive pastors, the Abuse of Faith expose revealed hundreds of Southern Baptist Convention sexual abuse cases. Books such as Jesus and John Wayne and The Making of Biblical Womanhood have left evangelicals reevaluating gender roles as they'd been taught, and now some voices are trying to help women objectively survey how their husbands and their church's views on marital sex have also shaped their lives. Sheila Grigor, Christian marriage blogger, author, and podcaster, and they just go on to link all her stuff that I don't care about. She's become someone women turn to in order to share what it's like to go from years of careful modesty to the first time they have sex on their wedding night, which can feel like you, quote, you don't have a choice because this is what you have to do on your wedding night. Grigor recently published The Great Sex Rescue with her daughter Rebecca Grigor. Beyond the grandiose, self-helpish title and end of chapter there are so many hyphens and quotation marks in this and parentheses that is legitimately hard to read. The book also touts the largest ever study asking Christian women about their sex lives, marriages, and beliefs about sex and marriage with a thesis that questions broader purity culture that has alternatively shamed and then sexually coerced married women for generations. She studied 20,000 people, and when we come back, we're going to talk about what these 20,000 Christian women had to say. It can't be good if the Christian men are writing books that say, your wife can be like methadone when you need your fix. 603-283-6160. There's more coming up. It's Free Talk Live.
The Free State Project has reached its goal of 20,000 liberty lovers who've pledged to move to New Hampshire and get active to achieve liberty in our lifetime. Perhaps you're trying to figure out what part of New Hampshire should be your destination. If so, consider Keene. You'll find more than 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com. Keene is famous for its historic, publicity-generating activism, as well as being the liberty media capital of the world. It's home to freekeene.com, New Hampshire's destination for liberty activism, news, and opinion. For years, we've been compiling over 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com, where you'll learn about some of what's happening here and what makes Keene a great place to live. If you love liberty, you'll probably enjoy anywhere you end up in the Shire. But do your due diligence first. Please visit move.freekeene.com for the full list of over 150 reasons to move to Keene. That's move.freekeene.com.
Are you tired of your taxes funding endless occupations around the world? Antiwar.com is run by people who understand that wars abroad become wars at home, wars on our freedoms. Antiwar.com is dedicated to bringing you the latest in news, views, interviews, and reviews from the top movers and shakers in the anti-occupation movement. Antiwar.com has it all, from thorough foreign policy analysis to interviews with whistleblowers who used to run the military-industrial complex. Anti-war, pro-free market. That's antiwar.com.
There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com.
This is Michael Dean from the Freedom Fiends. I've run websites since 1996 and have used over a dozen web hosts in that time. AgristHosting.com is the only one that hasn't broken my heart. Agrist Hosting's uptime and service is stellar, and their DDoS mitigation is the best I've seen. That's important because if you tell the truth in this world, you'll ruffle feathers. And some people will try dirty tricks to silence your voice. No matter what the haters hit us with, Agrist Hosting keeps our websites online. If you have a mission-critical commercial presence or a world-changing activism site, you cannot tolerate any skullduggery. So go with agristhosting.com. Have a WordPress or blog site, but you're not satisfied with performance or uptime? Or just want raw hosting? Want to pay with Bitcoin? Agrist Hosting specializes in high-performance hosting with personalized service. Go to agristhosting.com and click on the button that says Get Hosted. That's agristhosting.com.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
I'm a little obsessed with My Magic Mud. Several years ago, I met Jessica Armand, the founder and CEO of My Magic Mud, and I didn't even know my teeth were coffee stained. A week's worth of use convinced me, and now I use it every 3 or 4 days. It's clinically proven to whiten teeth, and I think it cleans better, too. My Magic Mud's available at most local health food stores, Sprouts, Natural Grocers, CVS, Walmart's Natural Beauty Aisle, but I can get it for you for 20% off with coupon code FTL20 at mymagicmud.com. FTL20 mymagicmud.com.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live. You're welcome to join us if you want to weigh in on this topic about evangelical women and the weird marriages they have found themselves in. Or you can talk about whatever you want if you don't want to talk about that. 603-283-6160. That's the call-in line for you to do that. 603-283-6160. Now, we're talking about this article here that goes into some pretty extreme detail about what these evangelical women have experienced throughout their marriages, and a lot of it's basically just, they were raped repeatedly, and because they thought that was their religious duty or their marital obligation or whatever. So Gregor did a survey of 20,000 Christian women And it demonstrated that while other studies have shown an orgasm gap, with 95% and only 65% of straight women reporting having one every or almost every time they have sex, Christian women fared even worse, orgasming just 48% of the time. Gregor says she thought it would be worse. I also thought it would be worse.
I was about to say, that sounds pretty high.
I think they're probably lying to save their husband's feelings.
They probably just don't know what an orgasm is.
Oh, that too. They're probably like, it wasn't terrible, so I guess that's what that is.
I definitely don't believe 48%. Not the ones that are in the positions that they're describing.
Mm-mm.
It is a sexual dissatisfaction without reason, the Great Sex Rescue argues. Behind such figures are women who have internalized, quote, gatekeeper obligations to keep premarital relationships pure, and what feel like present mandates to satisfy their husband's sexual urges. Among the women the author spoke to in interviews and focus groups was one named Piper. She described how she and her husband were dedicated to waiting until marriage for sex. Whenever she felt that things had gone too far, she would declare a 40-day fast from kissing.
Oh my God.
After the wedding. What are people? What? I don't. Look, I'm from parts of the South that are like this, but I didn't hang out with this exact crowd, so I never saw any of this.
You know what this reminds me of? Do you guys know the Duggars?
Mm-hmm.
The people with like 20 kids,
Yeah.
and they're like wear long skirts and they're like super religious.
Isn't one of their sons like a sex offender?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you surprised?
No.
Okay. So, but I remember watching the show, and they had older children that like started to date. They were probably like 18, 16, whatever. So they started to date, and there was like a strict no hand-holding rule, no kissing, couldn't be alone together. If you're going to give a hug, it has to be like a side hug, like no frontal
Side
front
hugs,
on
yeah.
front hugs. So that's just what this reminds me of.
What is this? Is this a television show?
Yeah, the Duggars. It was 19 Kids and Counting.
I think it's on the Learning Channel.
Yep. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Of course.
Never
That's where
heard
we
of it.
learn.
Yeah.
So she would declare a 40-day fast from kissing anytime that she felt things had gone too far. After the wedding, the couple attempted sex, but discovered that Piper had I don't know that word. A medical condition involving muscle spasms of the pelvic floor that can make sex difficult or impossible. It took 6 years for them to actually have intercourse. She now wonders what would have happened if they'd had sex one of the times she felt steamy before marriage, or if the first time they tried in marriage she had been aroused. The Great Sex Rescue underscores the importance of women enjoying sex, of intimacy and mutuality, while also noting that sexual pain rates are higher among Christians. Among women surveyed, 22.6% reported that condition or some other form of primary dysfunction that makes penetration painful. Overall, 6.8% had such pain that penetration wasn't possible.
So I don't get how that's related to them being Christian.
They didn't say. Yeah, they didn't draw any
Because
parallel whatsoever
that
to...
sounds like some sort of like congenital malformation, or like some sort of like STI or something, like an STD.
Or is it like psychosomatic, where
could be,
they are pressured into all of this and then their body just shuts down because they're literally so full of anxiety over it.
It could be. Maybe the book actually goes into this, but the article talking about the book certainly did not make the case that sexual pain rates are higher among Christians. They've done what they're supposed to do. They get married, sex hurts, and they don't even realize that this is something that other people deal with, so they don't even know they can get help, Gregor said.
Well, because they probably don't talk about it, because it's like super like taboo. Like you don't talk about sexual things if you're a good little girl,
And they don't have the experience to know that it's not supposed to hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Linda Klein grew up within the purity movement, and as she worked to understand why sexual shame followed her into adulthood, she spent 12 years talking to others about their own experiences, ultimately publishing the book Pure in 2018. She then founded a nonprofit and started offering one-on-one and group coaching for people processing purity culture's impact in their lives. And years out, Klein says, I hear from so many women who are experiencing this condition that, looks complicated, and I don't want to attempt to pronounce it. In her book, she noted the condition is more common among women who saved themselves for marriage, those who, due to religious or cultural reasons, develop an overriding fear of sex. It's unclear why Christian women experience such high rates, knowledge that's hindered in part by the general lack of research on the disorder. Grigor suggests a correlation between the symptoms and purity culture. It's the first time you have sex, you're having sex because you have to. Even if you don't want to, there's still that you have to message. She doesn't say it, but what she means is in the evangelical culture, it's not a free choice for many women. So they feel like, well, this is my wedding night, and so I need to, even if I'm not aroused, even if I'm super tired, even if I'm scared, I have to do this. An oft-quoted verse from the Bible, treated as core theology by many Christian sex and marriage writers, comes from 1 Corinthians 7:5 in a section on sexual morality, saying, quote, "Do not deprive one another, except perhaps by agreement for a set time, to devote yourselves to prayer, and then come together again, so that Satan may not tempt you because of your lack of self-control." I have to say, I'm impressed that the Bible actually pointed out that the issue would be a lack of self-control on the part of the men and not testosterone or female joggers or anything like that. It's just a lack of self-control. Much as snippets of scripture were drawn into popular books and a sprawling purity industry, a little Bible verse quoting can go a long way toward normalizing extreme teachings among evangelicals, who often draw their spiritual beliefs from an amalgam of Christian bestsellers. Yes, they do. That's how the whole Christian rapture and mythology came trapped in the Christian tradition, because of the books by Timothy LaHaye and Terry Jenkins called Left Behind, where it's not part of the Christian theology, but they wrote these Christian bestsellers, and then suddenly it became part of Christian theology. The Act of Marriage, a book that sold 2.5 million copies and was popular among Gen X Christians, described how conflict over sex, whether because of a woman's disinterest or, in one example, due to an abusive spouse's awful beatings of our children, could be resolved by the woman repenting and giving herself sexually to her husband.
That is awful. This makes me
awful.
so sad that people are just like, think that this is normal and like this is what God wants them to do.
Right.
No, God wants you to leave your husband and protect your children.
Yeah,
that's what God wants you to do.
Right. People are living that life silently.
Yeah,
Like, because
that's horrifying.
Some teachings even formalize the idea that sex cannot be refused in marriage. In 2020, a post of Grigor's went viral after she shared a document saved by a woman who had attended a Solomon Sex and Marriage Conference led by Shane and Phyllis Womack. Attendees received a sexual refusal commitment contract to be signed by husband and wife, pledging to, quote, "make ourselves 100% willing and available for biblical lovemaking, and to not directly or indirectly refuse my spouse's sexual needs and desires."
What is biblical
That is
lovemaking?
cringe. I don't know.
Being sold to a bunch of men in the street so that another man doesn't get raped. That's in the Bible, right?
I'm just amazed that any of these people, they went into this biblical sex convention, and the first thing they were told was that you have to sign this document saying that you are 100% willing and available for sex, and you can never directly or indirectly refuse your spouse's sexual needs or desires. And these people didn't go, "Oh my God, screw you.
Right.
I'm not signing this."
Leave.
Love and Respect, published in 2004 and still sold by Focus on the Family, uses the example of a mother arguing with her daughter to give her husband more sex. Hold on. I got to read that again. It uses the example of a mother arguing with her daughter to give her husband more sex.
What?
For mother, okay, the mother is arguing with the daughter to convince the daughter to give the daughter's husband more sex.
Okay. Now
Way
I
too many
understand.
pronouns there, author.
Yeah.
Why would you deprive him of something that takes such a short amount of time?
Oh no!
It's sometimes hard to believe I'm actually reading this article. And makes him so happy. Grigor and her co-authors note, "We can't imagine anyone expecting sex to feel good for a woman would emphasize its brevity above all else."
Cringe.
Yeah, this is bad. It goes on a bit further too, and we're going to get into it. 603-283-6160 if you want to weigh in on this. That's 603-283-6160. There's more coming up. It's Free Talk Live.
Are you tired of governments around the world killing innocent people? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin is money that cannot be inflated or controlled by any state. By continuing to use their money, you're perpetuating the killing. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available to you now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at Bitcoin.com. It's Bitcoin.com. Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com. There are basically two types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, Mark at freetalklive.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. chat.lrn.fm.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. The British government is removing extra restrictions that it placed on returning travellers from France. The country now becomes just like any other nation on the so-called Amber List. British travellers returning will not be required to quarantine. In other changes, India moves off the red list, and the government is adding Austria, Germany, Slovenia, Slovakia, Latvia, Romania and Norway to its list of approved destinations. Prime Minister Boris Johnson says it's designed to salvage part of the summer holiday season.
People think about them, they save up for them, people yearn to go abroad this year. I totally get that. We've got to balance that against the need to protect our country against the influx of new variants.
The quarantine requirements placed on travellers returning from France had become a political irritant in relations between London and Paris. There was rare agreement on Capitol Hill between Democrats and Republicans today over the threat China poses to the United States.
No other country represents more of a threat to the United States, its economic security, and democratic ideals than China.
That's Senator Mark Warner of Virginia, a Democrat, speaking at a hearing into Beijing's threats to U.S. economic security. Senator Marco Rubio of Florida is a Republican.
China is stealing between $300 and $600 billion a year of American technology and intellectual property.
New York's Governor Andrew Cuomo is under criminal investigation in 4 separate jurisdictions, including Manhattan. He's still refusing to resign, despite the publication of a damning report about his sexual harassment of 11 women and calls by President Biden for him to quit. One woman who claims the governor retaliated against her for coming forward now says she'll launch a lawsuit against him. On the streets of New York on Wednesday, there were signs the governor's popularity is waning.
His ego needs to just go off and say, okay, I need to just humble myself and just resign.
He's inappropriate and he's got some issues he needs to address.
59% of New York voters tell pollsters they now want him to go. The White House is rejecting a call by the World Health Organization for a moratorium on COVID-19 booster vaccinations until more people in the developing world get their first chance to get jabbed. President Biden's press secretary Jen Psaki says the White House disagrees.
We feel that it's a false choice and that we can do both. We've taken action on the global level far more than any country around the world, but we believe we can do both.
The Belarusian sprinter Kristina Timanovskaya is spending her first night in Poland after the government there offered her a humanitarian visa. She flew to Warsaw on Wednesday from Tokyo, just days after Belarusian security agents tried to force her to return to Minsk against her will. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. As the Taliban continues to try and seize control of several provincial capitals in Afghanistan, it is increasingly clear that the country faces a violent and turbulent future once US forces complete their withdrawal by the end of this month. President Ashraf Ghani this week accused the US of what he called an abrupt decision to pull out, and he said he had warned President Biden of the consequences of withdrawal. But the US remains determined to end its 20-year presence in the country, and this week Biden administration officials would not say whether they are committed to defeating the Taliban in order to defend the Afghan government. Oz Kateri is a freelance journalist with extensive experience in conflict zones.
The geopolitical situation is a lot more complicated. We can't point to one malicious actor and say, well, hey, if we got rid of that actor, then things would stabilise. By and large, the President Ashraf Ghani saying US withdrawal has led to a lot of this. Yes, I mean, given that it was a largely advisory role rather than a ongoing military occupation, I think it's fair to say that the Taliban wanted this opportunity, were pressuring the US to leave, and now that the US has left, they're using this opportunity to take control of as much of the country as they feasibly can.
The US says it's still committed to negotiations with the Taliban in Doha, although those talks have been underway for 3 years and so far have proved fruitless. The main news again, the British government is removing extra restrictions it placed on returning travellers from France. They'll now be able to avoid quarantine. Belarusian sprinter Kristina Timanovskaya is spending her first night in Poland after the government there offered her a humanitarian visa. And New York's Governor Andrew Cuomo is under criminal investigation in 4 separate jurisdictions after a report accused him of sexually harassing 11 women. And that is the latest feature story news. Simon Marks reporting.
The Dick Cheney Vice Presidential Library opens in a pitch-dark, sulfurous underground cave, and a seedless watermelon is coming to grips with the fact it'll never be able to have kids. This is the Onion Week in Review. Following a litany of tragedies occurring over the past year, a report this week from scientists at Princeton University confirmed that 90% of the Earth's atmosphere is now made up of thoughts and prayers. Researchers confirmed that with the rise of tragic events occurring all across the world each and every day, the Earth's atmosphere is 7% nitrogen, 3% oxygen, and 90% emotional pleas begging for everything to be okay. In other news, a new study finds nothing that will actually convince you to change your lifestyle, so just forget it. UMass Dartmouth is beginning to regret offering a course in applied domestic terrorism, and a sparrow thinks it might have caught the bird flu after puking seeds all morning. Stay tuned after the video for a brief tear in the fabric of space-time, offering a glimpse at next week's Onion Review. And keep checking theonion.com for more.
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live. You're welcome to join us. 603-283-6160. That's the call-in line for you to do that. 603-283-6160. With you tonight, it's Aria,
Nikki,
and Lori.
And we're talking about the situation that apparently evangelical women have found themselves in, and it's not good. In this book, Gregor reported women who agreed all men lust were 79% more likely to have sex out of a sense of obligation, and 59% less likely to be aroused during sex. Just having exposure to teachings that sex in marriage is obligatory, whether women accept the idea or not, has a lasting impact. Even women who had been taught they were obligated to have sex within marriage but rejected the notion were still 85% more likely to only have sex out of obligation than those who hadn't been exposed to those teachings. This latter segment of women would also more likely to be in a sexless marriage, have the illness that I am not going to attempt to pronounce, have a spouse with sexual dysfunction or a history of abuse. There are many links between a sense of obligation, coercion, and marital rape, but this is not a distinction widely made within Christian marriage and sex books. His needs, her needs, included a quote from a man who complained, quote, "I feel like a fool, like I'm begging her or even raping her, but I can't help it. I need to make love."
Give me a break.
Man, no kidding. I feel like I'm begging her or raping her, and he characterizes this as making love.
And that yet he still blames her. Like, it's your fault that I'm raping you.
Yeah, well, it's those joggers and secretaries, man.
If you were just into the non-effort that I put in here, then everything would be fine.
As Gregor and her co-authors wrote, we are supposed to have sympathy for the man who feels like he's raping his wife, but not for the woman enduring it. Man, there are so many books in here that I need to read just to hear how messed up these people's beliefs actually are. In The Great Sex Rescue, Gregor and her co-authors' survey showed when women enter a marriage believing they are obligated to have sex with their husbands whenever their husbands want it, they are 37% more likely to experience sexual pain and 29% less likely to frequently orgasm. When asked how they feel after sex, 16% of women said they use the word used. For women who believed prior to marriage that a wife is obligated to give her husband sex when he wants it, other diseases go up to 37%. One woman interviewed for this book described how hurt her husband feels if she denies him sex. I curl up in a ball on my side and let him do it. I'm detached emotionally, and this hurts him. I love my husband. He's my best friend, but sometimes I want out. She feels like she'll either lose her best friend or continue to feel abused. She tells him that it hurts when they have sex too often, but she says he tells her, then why would God say to never deny each other? Probably the number one thing that my clients talk about is disassociation. When it comes to sexuality, they just shut off. Whether they're able to do it physically or not, their minds shut off. 4 or 5 years into her marriage, Christy realized her husband had an alcohol problem. 8 years in, she tried to leave, but he talked her into coming home. She told him not to touch her. Within about a week, he took to following her around the house, harassing her to have sex with him. She refused, and, quote, then he'd be like, we need to have sex every night in order to restore the covenant. For a while, they did, but due to frequent yeast infections, she negotiated down to every other night. She was enraged and sighed. On the night she tried not sleeping with him, he'd sit beside her as she tried to read, hounding her, asking to pray for the kids together, and then once he had her attention, ask until she relented. What a monster this dude is. Or he'd promise to help more with the kids. That's the way it works, she remembers him saying. Guys are more helpful and more expressive if you have sex with them.
Are they?
It doesn't sound like
this one certainly wasn't. In the mornings, he told her how she screamed at him in her sleep. She was miserable and wanted to make sure their marriage couldn't be saved. I'm searching for answers. I'm trying to honor God. Online, she found Created to Be His Helpmeet. That's a strangely titled book. A book that advises navigating troubled marriages through obedience to one's husband, written by Debbie Pearl, who with her husband Michael writes books on family and child training. The Pearls are best known for the Pearl method of training children, which includes swatting babies and toddlers with plastic tubing, spoons, or a small branch in order to teach them discipline. The Duggars, who you talked about previously, are perhaps the method's most famous practitioners.
Oh, of course, I'm not surprised at all that they beat their children.
They teach swatting babies and toddlers with plastic tubes, spoons, and branches.
They don't talk about that in the show, but I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
Pearl, her messages of honoring God through obedience were what Christy started leaning into. It was all perpetuating this guilt. Me saying, he's not hitting me, he's not raping me, I guess I have to stay married. She remembers one day she was 7 months pregnant with her 5th child, exhausted from chasing a toddler and preschooler while homeschooling the oldest 2, and her husband started demanding sex. She said no at first, but he wouldn't stop asking. Finally, she agreed. While they were together, she looked at him and felt that he could sense her feelings. He knows, and he doesn't care. It happened so many times before, but, quote, it just hit me hard that time. He left for work, and she laid in bed, quote, and was broken. She stayed there throughout the day, the following day. As she once shared an abuse blog, I called a pastor. I asked God, I didn't want to sin. I didn't want to deny my husband his marital rights. And then they ended the story about her. I wanted to hear how did she divorce that loser? One might be forgiven, seeing the example of Harris's long but sincere seeming reconsideration of purity teachings, for expecting retractions and apologies as the book hits bookshelves. Since its publication, it's been met with gratitude, and it moves on into being basically a sales pitch for the book. So that that's pretty much the end of the. Oh no, it does get back to Christy eventually. Christy, who spent 12 years with her now ex-husband, finally left.
Oh, good for her.
She is remarried and in a healthier marriage. Still, there's no justice or retribution. She's grown up believing if she was modest and remained a virgin until marriage and followed all the teachings she learned in youth group, then her marriage would be blessed. As for the faith she worked so hard to serve, I do know that God is there, Jesus is there, but the God I grew up believing in, that's not who he is, and I have to restructure my understanding of him. I haven't really been able to do that. I'm stunned by how horrible this really sounds for these women.
Yeah.
I had no idea this was happening in evangelical circles.
Yeah, I didn't know that this was like a normal thing. That pretty much, it seems like the majority of these women are kind of all going through the same thing.
It does, and I mean it's all, I almost want to blame the religion, saying that this is Christianity's fault because that's what told them that
Yeah, that you have to wait until marriage, and then once you're married, you have to obey your husband, and they're feeding people all of this and
having them sign actual contracts saying that I agree not to deny you your sexual needs or desires. I mean, fair enough. The men also did have to sign one of those, but when they're already coming from this culture where they're supposed to serve and honor their husband, it leads to one particular conclusion with women feeling like they're being raped regularly.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely horrifying stuff. I wish I hadn't closed out of that because I kind of want to read some of those books. I mean, especially, it sounds like they won't be easy reads, but not everything I read is an easy read.
And sometimes that's like the most important ones, right?
Yeah,
the hard reads.
Oh, yeah.
Like I recently read Dear Leader, which is a book about this guy who escaped from North Korea. And it was really hard to read at many places. Like this blind woman who was, I don't think she was blind. I think she was pretending to be blind. But she basically sold her child for 100 of whatever their currency. But it wasn't because, she was trying to sell the child so that she could save herself or anything like that. It turned out to be because she was going to die within a few days. She then took that 100 North Korean dollars, whatever it was they called it, I don't remember now, and she bought a loaf of bread and gave it to her daughter, and there in the streets crying said, "I'm sorry, this is all I can give you. This person is going to take care of you now. This is what I leave you with, and it's a loaf of bread." I mean,
that's heartbreaking.
Not an easy read at all, but definitely worth reading.
Yeah.
And it sounds like that's going to be the case for a lot of these as well. But right now I'm reading a Chinese version of that, essentially. I haven't actually started it yet, but that's on my next to-do list to find out, how messed up is it really in China? I want to know. That's what started me reading Dear Leader. We don't have a lot of information about what it's like in these places. When we get back, most Americans believe that the worst is still ahead. What do you think? 603-283-6160.
Breaking weather news. Belize is sunny and around 82 degrees every day this week.
What's the forecast for your life? If current politics and economic prospects are cramping your freedom, escape to the tropics. ECI Development has affordable second homes for you to own or rent in Belize and other tropical countries. Places with stable governments and growing economies. Secure your freedom now. To find out more, send an email to ftl@ecidevelopment.com.
Some of you asked, and now we've delivered. LRN.FM's live Keene, New Hampshire studio shows are now streamed in HD on Twitch. Visit our channel at twitch.lrn.fm and give it a follow. If you have Amazon Prime, you get one free subscription on Twitch. If you use it on our channel, Twitch will give LRN.FM a monthly piece of your Prime subscription cost. So please watch, follow, share, and subscribe to twitch.lrn.fm. That's twitch.lrn.fm.
When a lunar observatory detects a radio broadcast originating from Proxima Centauri, the nations of Earth discover their first contact with an alien race may also be their last. With the Proximans facing an extinction-level disaster, Earth must choose between sending a ship on a multi-year journey or allowing nature to take its course. Saving Proxima, a hard science fiction thriller by Travis S. Taylor and Les Johnson from BaneBooks.com.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at Bitcoin.com. That's Bitcoin.com.
We have some good news. The indictments against Ross Ulbricht in the District of Maryland were dismissed with prejudice, meaning they can never be refiled. This is especially good because those indictments contain the only charge ever made that Ross engaged in murder for hire. This was a serious allegation that Ross Ulbricht denies. It was never prosecuted or ruled on by a jury, but was trumpeted by the federal government and the media as if it were proven fact. The Maryland court held these indictments for almost 5 years, poisoning Ross's case and leaving him under a cloud of unproven allegations. As explained in Ross's appeal to the Supreme Court, the fact that the judge used these allegations to give Ross a draconian sentence of double life without parole violated his Sixth Amendment right to a jury trial. Judges are required to issue sentences based on convictions decided by a jury, not unproven allegations never even charged at trial. Although this is a positive development, the dropped indictment will not set Ross free. Now, a presidential pardon is Ross's only hope of freedom. Sign the petition at freeross.org. freeross.org.
If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com.
Do you appreciate what we do? Help us advertise, market, and promote for just $5 a month at amp.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live. From one depressing story to a different depressing story, but this one's depressing for different reasons. Thankfully, it doesn't really have much to do with rape, but it does have to do with a loss of body autonomy to an extent. The majority of Americans believe that the worst in the pandemic is still ahead, according to a recent poll. Now, this whole thing started when they were like, just 2 weeks to flatten the curve, right? How the hell long ago was that? That was mid-March, wasn't it?
Yep. Yeah, it was like a year and a half ago almost.
It was definitely a long time ago, but a majority of Americans are saying that the worst of the coronavirus pandemic is still ahead of us. 54% of respondents said that the worst is still ahead of us, while 46% said the worst is behind us. The number represents a stark decline in just the past few weeks in the number of Americans who believe the worst days are over. In the beginning of July, 70% of respondents told Harris that the worst of the pandemic was behind us. If I say the words worst behind us one more freaking time in this article, get a thesaurus, man. But last week, 56% said the same thing, and the polling company attributed the 14-point drop to the surge of the Delta variant. The Centers for Disease Control backtracked its mask guidance last month to advise that even fully vaccinated Americans should wear masks in indoor settings in areas of substantial or high risk of transmission. And what's amazing is they know that this is going to take away the motive for the holdouts to get the vaccine, right? It didn't work to entice people with money. I mean, some of them are trying. There's a $100 COVID incentive that you brought in, Lori, where they want to give you $100 to get the COVID-19 vaccine. I'm going to hold out until they're giving away, Lamborghinis.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, I might do it for a Lamborghini.
Yeah. Or when they're giving away like 10 Bitcoin. So you give me 10 Bitcoin and I will get your stupid vaccine. I'll get the Johnson & Johnson for 10 Bitcoin. But I'm not getting it for $100 or a $25 gift card to Applebee's or whatever the hell it was.
And it's just so suspicious that they have to bribe people.
It is.
They've already made it ready and available and easy. They've made it as easy to get it as you can. It's free, this, that, and the other thing. But if that's not good enough, then something weird is going on if you make it as easy and convenient as possible and you still have to bribe people with $100, donuts, entrance into the lottery, and it's
absolutely insane. If it was as life-saving as, they were making it out, people would be lining up in the streets to get this thing.
And you wouldn't need a mask after.
And you wouldn't need a mask after. Excellent point.
Right.
Concerns about the variant have caused some areas to reimpose mask mandates. However, experts say that those who are unvaccinated remain at much higher risk of infection and severe disease. 76% of respondents in Monday's poll said they were very or somewhat concerned about the Delta variant, compared to 24% reasonable and otherwise rational people who were not at all or not too concerned about it. This was among 2,026 adults. Now, I mentioned that this has to do with body autonomy, and that's because, if I can find it, LA, Los Angeles, is now following the steps of New York City, as we knew they were going to. It would always be New York City and Los Angeles first. Will consider requiring vaccine proof at restaurants, gyms, indoor sporting events. Los Angeles is now considering a proposal to require proof of COVID-19 inoculation as a condition of entry at a host of indoor public spaces in what, if passed, would be the widest ranging vaccination mandate. Oh, I don't know why the hell that just happened. Anyway, page just suddenly changed. With coronavirus cases continuing to rise, Los Angeles County is considering the widest ranging vaccine verification effort in the city yet. I want to know, why is my health the business of the waitress or the restaurant manager or the gym, what do you call a person who stands there, attendee, whatever?
Yeah. Oh, well, this isn't about you. This is about grandma and the children.
I am not at all concerned about grandma and the children.
Well, it's your responsibility, single-handedly, to make sure that the entire world doesn't get COVID.
Well, if grandma and the children get their vaccines, then they should be okay, right?
Yeah, but the vaccines don't work, and they even admit the vaccines don't work.
Right, so why is anyone taking them?
I would certainly give it to you. It's probably my responsibility, in so much as it's anyone's, to make sure that my grandmother is well, if, I cared about that sort of thing. This motion, introduced Wednesday by City Council President Neri Martinez and Councilman Mitch O'Farrell, would require eligible individuals to demonstrate that they received at least one vaccination dose. Why? One vaccination dose doesn't work.
To show compliance.
That has to be what it is.
And that's why most people are getting it, because they're like, I just want to go back to normal. I just want to live my life. I just want to go on a cruise. I just want to go to the gym. I just want to go to the grocery store. So I'm going to do something that might possibly kill me just so I can live a convenient life.
See, it's silly, though, because every time you give up a freedom, they take more and more freedoms.
Exactly. People don't get it.
And so you're going to end up with no freedoms, and you're going to have no life to live.
The only way this ends is when people stop complying. Stop following all of their stupid rules.
Right.
Live your own life. Be a free, sovereign person. And make decisions for yourself, and don't let the government or the state dictate what you do, what you put in your body, and the way you live. You have to stand up against this.
Right.
And that seems very unlikely to happen, given how afraid people are. I mean, to them, these are all good things. These mandates are good things. A growing number of public agencies, private firms, and universities are also imposing vaccination requirements, but the new proposal would expand the concept dramatically in Los Angeles. Enough is enough already. Hospital workers are exhausted. Moms who have put aside their careers are tired, and our kids cannot afford the loss of another school year. These are all things the government caused to happen. We have 3 vaccines that work and are readily available, so what's it going to take? Our kids are about to return to school, and the unvaccinated are putting their lives at risk every day. Well, not if your kids are vaccinated.
But it doesn't work.
Ask your questions, talk to your doctor, and get the vaccine. Let's put this behind us. This vaccine that they've admitted doesn't work. If the city council or state imposes such a requirement, he said, it takes the onus off of individual businesses and eases fear among small businesses about the legal risk of doing so themselves. Decisions need to be made in a uniform manner that impact business who have been working tirelessly to keep their employees safe and customers safe. The council motion will next head to the ad hoc committee on COVID-19 recovery and neighborhood investment. So good on Los Angeles County for already having a committee on COVID-19 recovery and neighborhood investment.
Of course.
Which consists naturally of, two of the people who introduced this in the first place. Should the committee sign off, the motion would then go to the full city council for consideration. A 15-member city council for Los Angeles City. Keene, with a population of like 25,000, has a 15-member city council. Same as Los Angeles, which has exponentially higher population.
Sounds like they need some vaccine-free speakeasies.
What are your thoughts? 603-283-6160. They're coming to New York City. They're coming to Los Angeles. They're probably going to come everywhere. More coming up. It's Free Talk Live.
Carl Watner, longtime proponent of a voluntary society, died last December. You may have seen his articles published on his website, voluntarist.com, in his newsletter, The Voluntarist, the Mises Institute, or elsewhere over the last 40 years. His newest book, I Must Speak Out, Volume 2, The Best of the Voluntarist, is now available via Liberty Under Attack Publications. This 430-page second volume spans the years of 2000 through 2020 and includes articles by Carl Watner, Hans Hermann Hoppe, Carl Hess, Benjamin Tucker, George H. Smith, Lysander Spooner, Pete Eyre, Joyce Brand, and many others. I Must Speak Out is for the newly initiated, the veteran voluntarist, or anywhere in between. Buy the book now at libertyunderattack.com/voluntarist. For more great content on building a voluntary society and for Carl's extensive archives, check out voluntarist.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. The British government is removing extra restrictions that it placed on returning travellers from France. The country now becomes just like any other nation on the so-called Amber List. British travellers returning will not be required to quarantine. In other changes, India moves off the red list, and the government is adding Austria, Germany, Slovenia, Slovakia, Latvia, Romania and Norway to its list of approved destinations. Prime Minister Boris Johnson says it's designed to salvage part of the summer holiday season.
People think about them, they save up for them, people yearn to go abroad this year. I totally get that. We've got to balance that against the need to protect our country against the influx of new variants.
The quarantine requirements placed on travellers returning from France had become a political irritant in relations between London and Paris. There was rare agreement on Capitol Hill between Democrats and Republicans today over the threat China poses to the United States.
No other country represents more of a threat to the United States, its economic security, and democratic ideals than China.
That's Senator Mark Warner of Virginia, a Democrat, speaking at a hearing into Beijing's threats to U.S. economic security. Senator Marco Rubio of Florida is a Republican.
China is stealing between $300 and $600 billion a year of American technology and intellectual property.
New York's Governor Andrew Cuomo is under criminal investigation in 4 separate jurisdictions, including Manhattan. He's still refusing to resign, despite the publication of a damning report about his sexual harassment of 11 women and calls by President Biden for him to quit. One woman who claims the governor retaliated against her for coming forward now says she'll launch a lawsuit against him. On the streets of New York on Wednesday, there were signs the governor's popularity is waning.
His ego needs to just go off and say, okay, I need to just humble myself and just resign.
He's inappropriate and he's got some issues he needs to address.
59% of New York voters tell pollsters they now want him to go. The White House is rejecting a call by the World Health Organization for a moratorium on COVID-19 booster vaccinations until more people in the developing world get their first chance to get jabbed. President Biden's press secretary Jen Psaki says the White House disagrees.
We feel that it's a false choice and that we can do both. We've taken action on the global level far more than any country around the world, but we believe believe we can do both.
The Belarusian sprinter Kristina Timanovskaya is spending her first night in Poland after the government there offered her a humanitarian visa. She flew to Warsaw on Wednesday from Tokyo, just days after Belarusian security agents tried to force her to return to Minsk against her will. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live, 603-283-6160 if you want to join the discussion. 603-283-6160. I want to say thank you to Doodlebug67, who is tonight's amplifier. This means that Doodlebug67 is a member of the AMP program. You can find it at amp.freetalklive.com. That's amp.freetalklive.com. Doodlebug is a platinum level amplifier, which means that Doodlebug is contributing at least $25 per month to the AMP program. Again, you can find that at amp.freetalklive.com. We don't ask that much. All it costs is $5 per month to join the program. That gets you in. amp.freetalklive.com, amp.freetalklive.com. And Nikki, you were talking during the break. I just want to preface this by saying, finally, a doomsday variant. Can we get this over with now?
The variant we've all been waiting for. The apocalypse is here.
Eagerly waiting. From the moment this stuff started, I was like, all right, it's time. Zombie apocalypse, let's go. And then it was, oh no, Grandma has the sniffles. Well, this is the most disappointing zombie apocalypse I've ever seen. Can we just get this doomsday going?
So Newsweek has made an article, and they also have, I think it's a magazine, right? They also have
a magazine, yes.
A cover of it. Great Science Trips on Earth, Newsweek, the Doomsday Variant. So they have a whole spread on their magazine if you want to read it while you're checking out at the grocery store. Scientists keep underestimating the coronavirus. Okay, that's news to me.
They have been overestimating it from the start, I think.
In the beginning of the pandemic, they said mutated versions of the virus wouldn't be much of a problem until the more infectious...
No. The vaccine pushers said that. The government and Pfizer and Moderna said that. The scientists and the rational people were like, oh, yes, they're going to be a problem.
Yeah, forever.
Yeah, since the beginning. So it seems like Newsweek has it all backwards. So they said mutated versions of the virus wouldn't be much of a problem until the more infectious alpha caused by a spike in cases last fall.
I gotta say, I can't wait for 3 years from now when I can point to old episodes of this show and go, oh yeah, by the way, we said all of that way before you guys did.
Yep.
And you called us crazy. You told us we were manslaughterers. You told me I was killing your grandma.
That's how I felt this whole time. I'm like, I had been saying like whatever thing for like over a year, and then like some mainstream news source comes out and says the exact thing I've been saying, and I'm like, you guys have all been calling me crazy this whole time, and here I am. But anyways, the article continues to say, then beta made young people sicker, and gamma reinfected those who had already recovered from COVID-19. Still by March, as the winter surge in the U.S. receded, some epidemiologists were cautiously optimistic that the rapid vaccine rollout would soon tame the variants and cause the pandemic to wind down.
Well, that's stupid. Why would they have thought that? It would literally have the exact opposite effect.
Yeah, now we just have the doomsday variant.
Yeah, now you have the variants that, don't care about the vaccine because they were given room in which to evolve in the first place.
I just love how dramatic they are about the Delta variant.
Yes,
because
absolutely. They're calling the Delta variant the Doomsday variant?
No. The Doomsday is the one after the Delta variant. They still haven't. I haven't seen any. They're still just talking about the Delta variant. So maybe you're right.
God,
maybe they are calling it the Doomsday variant, which is strange because we're not seeing an influx of patients admitted in the hospital with any form of COVID. It's still kind of. Things are pretty tame. I don't know anybody who has COVID right now. People aren't dying in the streets. So I don't know where is the Delta variant? Is there anywhere in the world?
I know of two fully vaccinated people, for those keeping score at home, who recently tested positive for COVID-19. I say I know of them because they're a coworker's roommates, and I don't actually know. I'm assuming she's not lying to me.
Yeah.
But these two fully vaccinated people have tested positive for COVID-19 and are now under a 14-day quarantine that they don't actually want to be under.
Also, how do we differentiate between the variants?
Yeah, they don't know which variant they have.
Well, when you take a COVID test, which they've already said the COVID tests don't work, now that vaccinated people are testing positive, they're like, oh, just kidding, those don't work. Even though they've been producing false positives the entire time. They don't tell you which variant it is. So I don't know why they're saying, oh, this is the Delta variant, this is the Alpha variant. I just don't know how they would know that.
Because how else do they keep you scared?
Yeah, it's just a whole...
Presumably they're sending them out to a lab to be studied or analyzed? I don't know.
Maybe. So it continues to say the Delta variant has now shattered that optimism. This variant, first identified in India in December, spreads faster than any previous strain of SARS-CoV-2. As the COVID virus is officially named. It is driving up the infection rates in every state of the U.S., blatant lie, prompting the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention to once again recommend universal mask wearing.
Is that really what prompted them to do it? Or do they go, oh no, we let these people have too much freedom, now we need to clamp back down?
So how many variants are there now? There's Alpha, Delta, Lambda or whatever it was called?
Yeah, the Lambda, that was one of them.
Well, there's bound to be thousands, right? I mean, there was one that was unique to the minks in Denmark, I think it was, where they slaughtered 15 million minks.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Make everyone line up every day to get their new shot for the new variant.
Yeah.
Get in your bread line for shots.
Every single day, because it's a cold and they evolve constantly.
Well, and that's why, like, with the common colds, there isn't, like, the Delta variant of the common cold.
Right, it's just the cold.
It's just the cold, because if we took our time to try to name them all, it's just literally impossible, because there's probably thousands of strains of the common cold.
Right.
What's interesting to me is that when these strains first started appearing, they didn't name them. It wasn't the alpha strain or the beta strain or any of these other. It was strain HG74-2 or whatever.
That's not as scary as Doomsday.
No, and then there were some prominent ones, and they started going, oh no, these aren't scary enough. This is the Delta strain.
Alpha.
They're not scared of HG74-2.
Right.
But if we call it the Delta strain, that'll get them afraid.
Right.
And it appears to be working for a large number of people.
Yeah. So the Delta outbreak is going to get much worse.
But what about the Doomsday strain? That's the one I want to see.
I'm wondering if the Delta is the Doomsday strain, which is even more laughable because the Delta has proven to be a big nothing, just like everything else in COVID history.
COVID itself, yeah.
So this epidemiologist who leads the Centers of Infectious Disease Research and Policy at the University of Minnesota, the number of intensive care beds needed to be higher than any time we've seen. He adds that his team's analysis shows that almost every single one of the 100 million unvaccinated Americans who hasn't yet got the COVID-19, will likely get it in coming months. Short of taking...
Well, I mean, that's obvious. If it's truly that contagious, then anyone who doesn't have it is going to get it at some point.
I just really don't think that it's that contagious. I really don't think it's that big of a deal because...
It can't possibly be that contagious because when I had it, I continued to work through it at, the place that I worked at, and not a single person got it because of me.
Yeah.
I feel like that's what they said in the beginning, too, though. They were like, we're all going to get it. Like, right away, we're all going to get it.
Then let's get it and get it over with, man.
Yeah, and even in the beginning, I remember I was working at a nursing home, and we had this, like, whole huge, scary, like, apocalyptic, end-of-the-world style staff meeting where they just scared everybody and said all this crazy stuff. And then they were telling us that the COVID virus can live on surfaces for days and
I remember that.
Yep, cardboard
and
boxes.
Then like a couple months later, they were like, just kidding, it's like most viruses and it only lives on a surface for like a few hours and then it's gone.
Remember when everyone was bleaching their groceries? Well, not everyone, but the crazy people?
Yeah, that won't get you sick.
Yeah.
It's been a crazy year and a half, and hopefully we have the doomsday strain to look forward to. We're going to continue talking about that. 603-283-6160. Are you afraid yet? Does the doomsday strain make you afraid?
On March 16th this year, government task forces violently raided the New Hampshire Bitcoin Embassy, the Mighty Moose Mart, the homes of Aria DiMezzo, Andy and Renee Spinella, Colleen Fordham, a grandmother, and perhaps most relevant, the studios of Free Talk Live. The Crypto Six were arrested. 4 were released on bail conditions, but Ian Freeman was held hostage for 69 days. Rich Paul, also known as Nobody, remains captive. We've consulted attorneys who say no crime even appears to have been committed. But that didn't stop the Joint Thug Task Force from ripping out wires from our broadcast stacks, taking Free Talk Live off the air, resulting in a violation of our and your First Amendment rights. You can visit thecrypto6.com to help, but as importantly, contact other media and tell them about this outrage. This case is likely to set precedent for cryptocurrency use well into your future. Help our fight for liberty and financial freedom at thecrypto6.com.
So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com. The LRN.FM's social media channels have been revamped. We've eliminated Facebook and focused on other platforms like Twitter and Mastodon, the decentralized alternative to Twitter. On our accounts, you'll find posts from multiple LRN.FM show hosts together in one place. Follow us on Twitter at twitter.lrn.fm, or better yet, move to the decentralized Mastodon social media platform at toot.lrn.fm, toot.lrn.fm. I think you'll like it.
Uncovering the secrets and exposing the lies. That's what the readers of freedomsphoenix.com get every day. freedomsphoenix.com, constantly providing the information, the real news about government policies, and the real relationship we all have with the coercive government. The real condition of the economy, innovations in technology, breakthroughs in energy, health, and computer science. Learn the truth well before it's admitted to in the lamestream media. The corporate media, nothing more than distributors of government propaganda, but now there's an alternative. freedomsphoenix.com. Constant news updates on the issues that affect your life in the most important ways. With liberty and property under constant attack, freedomsphoenix.com provides the understanding behind the propaganda, and it encourages the participation of its readers. Go to freedomsphoenix.com. That's freedoms with an S, phoenix.com. freedomsphoenix.com. The revolution between the ears has already happened.
There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com. The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live. She Talk Live, making it all the way through yet another Topless episode of the show without getting kicked off of Odyssey, because Odyssey is a mostly decentralized. The platform behind it is decentralized, but Odyssey is a little more centralized than LBRY itself. But you can check it out over at video.freetalklive.com. But maybe you're also looking for a social media platform that is more to your liking, that allows you to say what you actually want without worrying about being censored or flagged for medical misinformation or whatever. Check out social.freetalklive.com. We have a Mastodon server that is running there, and it's basically a Twitter clone, except no one can censor you. Well, technically people can censor you, but it's not going to happen. So check that out. social.freetalklive.com. Let's go to the phones. We've got Jerry calling from Oregon. Jerry, you're on Free Talk Live.
Hello. Thanks for taking my call.
Yeah, what's on your mind tonight?
Yeah, I was calling in about the coronavirus and like the vaccine and stuff like that, and I was wondering if you guys were aware of the Stu Peters.
I'm not familiar with the name. Who is he?
Well, I just found out today about him, and on RBN they aired an interview that he did with a guy from Alberta, Canada. And he actually went to court about these, or all the mandates and stuff like that. And he actually won his case in court.
Good on him. I've got myself and Ian Freeman and the owner of the Vietnamese place here in town, which is Pha Keen Great, have a pending lawsuit against Governor Sununu and the city of Keene. But that's been pending for almost a year now. So I don't think it's ever going to go anywhere. Unfortunately,
Well,
but I mean,
anyways,
yeah, that's the way to fight back against this.
Yes, and he actually made it so that Alberta, if you look it up, it's on rumble.com, Stu Peters, and if you go to the video of freedom fighter wins victory in court against quarantines, masks, and
sure. So what did he do?
He got a fine for $1,200, and he went to court to fight it, and
rightfully
he made them try to prove that there was actually a virus, and they couldn't prove any evidence.
Interesting. And this was in the Alberta courts?
Yes, it's in Alberta, Canada.
Right. Well, that's cool. I'll have to look into that sometime. Thank you so much tonight for the call, Jerry. I certainly haven't seen a lot of evidence that any such thing as COVID-19 exists, other than, yes, there was that period where I felt sick for a 8 to 12 hour period, and I lost my sense of smell or taste. But that was the extent of it. As far as seeing evidence of a pandemic or signs of a pandemic and bodies piling in the streets or hospitals being overwhelmed, I just haven't seen it anywhere that I've looked.
I mean, there definitely were some people that were really, really sick, but I always see people that are really, really sick, so it wasn't really anything out of the norm.
Well,
right?
maybe the doomsday strain will change that.
Maybe.
People die from the flu every year, you know?
Yep.
Especially the elderly,
Yep.
the already sick, the people who are dying from COVID.
Yeah, it seemed like it was just hyped up over
Right.
nothing, and a lot of the medical treatments they were giving people were actually making them worse and not
Right.
better.
Right,
You're
using
speaking of the
intubation.
ventilator and stuff like that?
Yep. Yeah, and hospitals were actually bribed to, like, I think it was like $15,000 or $12,000 each person that was put on a ventilator. Where, if you know anything about ventilators, if you're on them for too long and it's not absolutely necessary, it's really, really dangerous, and it can actually give you pneumonia, and it can be very life-threatening. So in healthcare, we try absolutely everything to avoid putting someone on a ventilator. Like, you have to be not able to breathe, and you have to be on the verge of death to put someone on a ventilator. So
horrifying.
Yep, and they were doing a lot of that in New York City.
And the government was bribing people to do this.
Yeah,
To put,
which is even scarier, and they were getting paid off for every death that they labeled as a COVID death too. I think that was $5,000. So it was just really, which makes no sense. Like, why would you pay them for a COVID death if it wasn't to bribe them to label other things as COVID deaths?
That's a really good question.
Yeah, so, Newsweek goes on to say that the Delta variant, like most other variants, has blindsided us, worsening and extending the pandemic.
It didn't blindside us, it blindsided them, but the rest of us sat around going, oh yeah, there's going to be variants of this thing because it's a cold, and that's what colds do.
Right.
When the damage from the Delta starts to subside, what other variants will be lurking just behind it to pull us back down again? The World Health Organization is already keeping an eye on several.
Oh, well, thank God for that.
ETA?
Hopefully they give them catchy names.
ETA, well, this one I don't even know how to pronounce it. ETA, whatever, which is now in several countries. Kappa, which arose in India. Lota, which first popped up in New York City. And especially Lambada, which has torn through Peru and shows signs of having unusual success in infecting fully vaccinated people, according to one early study. It has already spread to Argentina.
Could have anticipated that could happen?
It's like they're not vaccinated for it at all.
Yeah, it's almost like they're vaccinated for another completely different variant of the coronavirus.
Maybe.
That's so weird.
Yeah.
Who would ever have imagined such a thing could happen? That getting a vaccine against cold A doesn't do anything against the rapid mutating cold that is cold L.
Remember how we got the flu shot once in our lives and we're protected forever?
I've never had a flu shot.
Oh, me neither, but I mean, like, that's not how it works.
Yeah, exactly. You have to get it every single year. And even in the beginning, me and other people in healthcare were theorizing, like, this is just going to be like another flu shot. Like, every year, you're going to have to get your COVID.
And your boosters.
Yep, and that's the weird part. So a flu shot, you just get it once, and it's pretty clear, like, it doesn't protect you against all variants of the flu, but they just pick the most common one from the previous year. They do their research, and then that's the strain that they go with. But you only get one, and that's it. But with the COVID shot, now they're talking about how you need a third booster, and they're not saying, oh, you should just get one every year, and that's what it is. They're just...
No, it'll be a booster every 45 days, from what I can tell.
Yeah, and it's really clear that they have absolutely no clue what they're doing, and they have absolutely no clue what they're talking about, and they're just, like, it's just a shot in the dark.
But they are making tons of money from it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And it's really clear that this Newsweek article is just a big, long, scary article to try to scare everybody with a bunch of random words that they've named different strains of the coronavirus, and they just want you to be super scared and get the vaccine and then get another one and then get another one and wear your mask. And
don't forget, you can get eye drops for your eye inflammation and some lotion that they sell you for your blisters that you get.
And I saw that too. One girl, I forget what she got from it, but she posted to one of the COVID side effects groups I'm in, and so she got the Pfizer shot, and the treatment for the side effect that she got was from Pfizer.
Yep.
So not only do they sell the disease, but they're also selling the cure.
Right. That's the perfect plan.
Well, imagine how much money they would make if every 45 days or whatever, even if it's every 2 months or every 3 months, Americans, all 320 million of them, had to get yet another booster shot.
Wait, but Aria, nobody told you the COVID shot's free. You don't have to pay for it. That means it's free.
Yes, but someone is paying for it, and Pfizer and Moderna are going to become very, very rich.
We just print more money.
Yep.
That's ultimately what they'll do, and as a result of that, anyone who uses USD continues subsidizing this nonsense. This is a giant cash grab for Big Pharma.
Yep.
The same companies that 4 or 5 years ago we knew couldn't be trusted, now the American government is just bending over backward to hand them as much cash as they can, and to convince people to give them a reason to give them even more cash.
That's because they're holding hands.
They are. Big Pharma, big government, always on the same team.
That's right.
And you need to get away from their currency, because using the USD, that's what's allowing them to do this. Get into Bitcoin, get into goldbacks, get into cryptocurrency.
Yeah.
Just stop using the USD, because they're not going to tax people to pay for this, because they can't. They'd have to increase taxes by enormous amounts in order to pay for this nonsense, and Americans would revolt. So instead, they're just going to inflate the currency. They're just going to print the money.
Yep.
And that will be why, your bottle of water that used to be 20 ounces and then was 16.9 ounces is now just a 12-ounce bottle of water. And the price of it went up to $1.89 per bottle instead of $1.39 or whatever.
Get out before it's too late. Do yourself a favor.
When you're all starving to death, you'll
Absolutely.
do whatever they tell you.
Absolutely.
But thanks for listening. We're online in the meantime. You can check us out and chat with us and interact with us over at social.freetalklive.com. Again, that's social.freetalklive.com. Same time tomorrow, it's been Free Talk Live.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
Breaking weather news. Belize is sunny and around 82 degrees every day this week.
What's the forecast for your life? If current politics and economic prospects are cramping your freedom, escape to the tropics. ECI Development has affordable second homes for you to own or rent in Belize and other tropical countries. Places with stable governments and growing economies. Secure your freedom now. To find out more, send an email to ftl@ecidevelopment.com.
Are you a cryptocurrency advocate? The Crypto Tip is the ideal outreach tool to help new people discover cryptocurrency. It's a printable business card-sized tip that you can give to service providers, preferably in addition to a good cash tip. When the server scans the QR code, it'll bring up an explanation of cryptocurrency, how to install a wallet, and allow them to claim the tip. If they don't claim the crypto, you get your tip refunded to you after a time period you specify. Plus, if they do claim the tip, you get an email alert. Create as many tips as you want at cryptotip.org. That's cryptotip.org. What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
This is the Liberty Radio Network, broadcasting the latest liberty-oriented audio content 24 hours a day at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. The British government is removing extra restrictions that it placed on returning travellers from France. The country now becomes just like any other nation on the so-called Amber List. British travellers returning will not be required to quarantine. In other changes, India moves off the red list, and the government is adding Austria, Germany, Slovenia, Slovakia, Latvia, Romania and Norway to its list of approved destinations. Prime Minister Boris Johnson says it's designed to salvage part of the summer holiday season.
People think about them, they save up for them. People yearn to go abroad this year. I totally get that. We've got to balance that against the need to protect our country against the influx of new variants.
The quarantine requirements placed on travellers returning from France had become a political irritant in relations between London and Paris. There was rare agreement on Capitol Hill between Democrats and Republicans today over the threat China poses to the United States.
No other country represents more of a threat to the United States, its economic security, and democratic ideals than China.
That's Senator Mark Warner of Virginia, a Democrat, speaking at a hearing into Beijing's threats to U.S. economic security. Senator Marco Rubio of Florida is a Republican.
China is stealing between $300 and $600 billion a year of American technology and intellectual property.
New York's Governor Andrew Cuomo is under criminal investigation in 4 separate jurisdictions, including Manhattan. He's still refusing to resign, despite the publication of a damning report about his sexual harassment of 11 women and calls by President Biden for him to quit. One woman who claims the governor retaliated against her for coming forward now says she'll launch a lawsuit against him. On the streets of New York on Wednesday, there were signs the governor's popularity is waning.
His ego needs to just go off and say, okay, I need to just humble myself and just resign.
He's inappropriate and he's got some issues he needs to address.
59% of New York voters tell pollsters they now want him to go. The White House is rejecting a call by the World Health Organization for a moratorium on COVID-19 booster vaccinations until more people in the developing world get their first chance to get jabbed. President Biden's press secretary Jen Psaki says the White House disagrees.
We feel that it's a false choice and that we can do both. We've taken action on the global level far more than any country around the world, but we believe we can do both.
The Belarusian sprinter Kristina Timanovskaya is spending her first night in Poland after the government there offered her a humanitarian visa. She flew to Warsaw on Wednesday from Tokyo, just days after Belarusian security agents tried to force her to return to Minsk against her will. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
A new trend in offices across the country. More and more people are switching to fetal position desks so that they can curl up in a ball on the floor while they work. Aaron Vaughn has a story.
The human body isn't meant to sit at a desk for 6 or 7 hours. The natural position, especially in the workplace, is to shut down completely, return to a womb-like state, and rock back and forth to soothe yourself.
Fetal position desks, which are even popping up in offices like Google and Facebook, come in a variety of shapes and sizes. Some have adjustable height, so you can cower underneath them, while more expensive options include a warm, pulsating blanket for workers to wrap themselves in to feel calm. But many people are making their own.
I've rigged this up so I can type comfortably and my arms won't get tired. Plus, it's got speakers so I can listen to a comforting voice saying shh over and over again.
I've tried a fetal position desk myself, and I can say it's a great way to get through the f***ing day.
Thanks, Aaron. I hate my job.
This is the Onion News Network.
The latest episode of Declare Your Independence is next, here on the Liberty Radio Network, LRN.FM.
It's time for Declare Your Independence with Ernest Hancock.
Believe me when I say we have a difficult time ahead of us. But if we are to be prepared for it, we must first